tonight's public consultation on a proposed zoning change. We will move with the adoption of the agenda. It is proposed by Councillor Schaefer, seconded by Councillor Goldwax, and resolved that the agenda of the public consultation meeting is hereby approved as submitted. So I will give you a little bit of context of what we are exploring to do, and then we're going to open up the floor for public question period. I want to preface this by saying this is just an idea right now. It's in the idea phase. There has been no ultimate decision on this. This is the very first step of a very long process that will take months. I want to reassure everyone that it is not the individuals on this side of the table that ultimately make the decision. It's going to be the residents and the residents alone. We naturally have to give residents a choice. What I mean by that is, if we go down this path and at the end of the process, a referendum is triggered by register, I'll tell you right off the bat, I don't believe anybody on council wants there to be a referendum. So an issue like this does not warrant a referendum, and I don't believe it would be passed for a referendum. I also want to say a few things on the process and what it is that the change to the floor space index actually means. A few months ago, Council had a discussion on changing the FSI. FSI stands for Floor Space Index, and I'll get into the actual characteristics and technical terms of what that means, but I just want to give you a high-level overview. And the suggestion was to normalize the FSI in Zone RA1, which some people refer to as Old Hampstead, with RA2, which is known as New Hampstead. And it was unanimous across council. The main takeaway from this is, and what's very important to know is, nobody on council believes this will change the look of the town. That's not what we're trying to do. And if it does, at the end of this process, council is given evidence that it will change the look of the town, I can't speak for every other councillor, but I could speak on my behalf. I would not be in favor of it. We're being very open-minded when we're exploring this. The process is going to be as follows. Last month, we passed a draft bylaw, which is the very first step in exploring any type of zoning change. At a minimum, it has to go through another, council would have to pass another draft bylaw, and then ultimately the tabling of the final resolution, which is subject to referendum by way of register. 434 signatures would be required to trigger a referendum. Now I just want to talk a little bit about the FSI, and then we'll open up the floor to questions. FSI, which is Floor Space Index, is a function that dictates how much livable space someone could have on the inside of their house. We are not, and I want to make this very clear, we are not proposing, nor do we intend at all, in any manner whatsoever, to change the exterior look of a home. We are not changing the maximum footprint that a building can have on land. We are not changing the maximum height that a building can have. We are not changing the setbacks that a building has. We are not changing the minimum green space that a building is required to have. What we are focused on is the inside of a house. From my perspective, on any level of government, unless there is illegal activity going on, it is no one's business what is being done inside someone's house. I want to give you an example of how I think changing the FSI from 52% to 80% can be helpful for homeowners. Let's say you had a lot of 10,000 square feet, and on that lot was a bungalow of 3,000 square feet, so a 3,000 square foot home. That is currently an FSI of 30%. Now let's say down the road that individual, that homeowner wants to add on a second floor to that home. There is, in the current bylaws, as they are written today, that homeowner has every right to add on a second level to the first floor, to a bungalow. And then it would be up to the homeowner to comply with the FSI of 52%. Unfortunately, when you're adding on 3,000 square feet to 3,000 square feet on a 10,000 square foot lot, that would put the FSI at 60%. So what we're telling the homeowner is, yeah, you could build your box the way you want on the outside, but you'd have to have a big hole in the middle of your second floor to comply with the 52% FSI. Or you'd have to have a 20-foot dining room to comply with the FSI. Even if we didn't change this bylaw, that homeowner still has a right to add on a second floor, but would be restricted with how they design the layout of their second floor. And I'll maybe before we start public question period, I'll open the floor to any counselor that wants to add to this. But I think the important thing to recognize is we absolutely do not want to change the look of the town. This is not an exterior issue for us. This is strictly interior. One other thing that I forgot to mention, after tonight's public consultation period, we will be, and I'm very happy that you showed up. I wish there were more people that turned out and expressed their concerns. We want to validate and analyze everybody's concerns and make sure that everybody is heard. We will be mandating an urban planning firm to provide us with good data and an opinion on whether this is the right thing for Hampstead, on whether this will change the look of the town or it will not. And probably after those results are in, we're going to have another public consultation after sharing this with you. This is going to be a very transparent, slow process to make sure that what we're doing is in fact in the best interests of Hampstead. So with that, maybe we'll start off with the chairman of the PAC, Warren Budning, if you have anything to add. Otherwise, we'll move it along to another councillor, or we could go straight to a public question period. And I just want to remind everybody, because it is being recorded, we will be sharing this video with the urban planning firm. So I want to encourage all councillors and any resident to actually speak into the microphone, because otherwise they will not be able to hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the mayor covered it adequately. The whole big picture is this is just the start, and it's a preliminary step in a bigger picture process moving forward, not only with the urban planning firm that will be implicated, and as well circling back to the PAC to get their opinion, and to working with the urban planning department of the city. This is not a guarantee that we're moving forward with this. It's not to say that we're going from 52 to 80%. It's not to say that the urban planning firm may come back and recommend we go to 60%. The urban planning bylaws are fluid in nature and need to adapt to the times, and we have to balance the architectural characteristics and the integration of the existing neighborhood with what homeowners are looking to accomplish and what they're hoping to get out of the usage of their land and homes, and finding that balance between everything. I think it's just important to note that in no way are we looking to change the front setbacks, the side setbacks, the rear setbacks, the building heights, or anything of the sort that should impact that from a visual standpoint. It's just the usage of the volume of your house. And this all started with the concept of homeowners that had properties that were not able to build into their attic space. And this whole conversation and process started in the context of people looking to use the existing volume of their house, building up into the attic and moving forward. We've expanded upon that discussion in speaking with many homeowners and so forth, but this is, like the mayor said, a very, very preliminary step in a long, slow, and certainly transparent process.
Thank you, Councillor Bunning. Is there any other councillor that would like to share any comments or thoughts before we open up the floor? Okay.
I would just say that...
Go, just use it into the microphone.
I would just say that the important thing for me is to be able to understand it. I want to understand what it is I don't understand, so I want to be able to hear from the urban planning people and tell us specifically, directly, are there any possible unintended consequences that I just don't see yet? And until that time, I would withhold my judgment.
Okay, thank you. So without further ado, we'll open up the floor now. Please feel free to ask a question, share your concern, whether they are positive or negative, whatever. We'd like to hear from you. Please.
Hi, my name is Martin Vines. I'm puzzled. I've listened to what you've said, and I don't understand why you appear to be using a very general change in the bylaws in order to make a very specific change to allow a very specific type of behavior. The only effect that I heard that is being sought with the change in the bylaw is to allow the existing volume of the house to be changed. Why not allow that through a bylaw instead of making something which is a lot more vague and may have unintended consequences? Thank you.
So what exactly are you suggesting?
If you have a very narrow objective in mind, which is what was described,
right,
then why not address that very narrow objective instead of expanding it through a much more complex tool?
Okay, so I'm just trying to figure out, when you say we have a very narrow objective, what do you mean by that? What is our objective?
Well, what I heard was the objective is to allow people who have an existing two-story home with an attic to be able to change the attic.
So that's not the only objective. Like the example I gave earlier is with the current bylaw as it is now. Let's say there were no changes made.
Okay.
Somebody has a 3,000 square foot bungalow on a 10,000 square foot lot. Okay, so that's a 30% FSI.
Okay.
With the current bylaws the way they are now, without any changes, that homeowner can add a second floor to their home if they wanted to.
Okay.
Okay, and it's not going to be any larger with a 52% FSI or an 80% FSI.
Okay.
The only thing that we would be restricting them in not changing this bylaw is how they configure their second floor. So that has nothing to do with the attic.
Okay, but what I don't see that has been done is someone sat down and said, look, these are the specific changes that we want to allow. These are the things which are going on at the moment, which which are difficult to do because of the existing bylaws. And here are some of the new things that we want to allow. And that's why we want to change the bylaw.
Well, that's exactly it. The difficulty is that if somebody adds a second floor to their house, they are restricted with the layout of that floor.
But then why not be specific in the changes rather than make a major change in...
So how would you propose dealing with that issue?
I would propose identifying what are the changes that members of the community are looking for, listing them and changing the bylaws specifically to address those issues, rather than making a very general change.
Well, that's, and again, unless you have another suggestion specifically on how to do that, that's the way that we see to deal with that specific issue. So in that specific situation that I presented to you, how would you propose specifically dealing with that issue if not for changing the FSI?
If that's, okay, if that is the two issues which I've heard now, one is build a second floor, the other is to reconfigure an attic. Why not have a bylaw which just deals with those specific issues? Unless there are a whole host of issues and you need a general solution to a general problem, why not go ahead with a specific solution to specific problems?
Okay. So with regards to your comment on the attic, that was dealt with last month because an additional item that we're doing in this change is changing the definition of what constitutes FSI. So last month we passed a resolution that says attic space is no longer part of the FSI. That was dealt with. So we had a specific issue and a specific problem. This is a more broad problem, and I can give you another example. Let's say somebody already has a two-story house, and that two-story house has a 35% footprint. Okay, just for clarity, the maximum footprint a house can have is 40%. But let's say somebody has a two-story house, and their FSI is 52%. Okay? If they wanted to add a solarium in their backyard, they cannot do so because of the FSI. They can because of the footprint. They're not taking up the maximum exterior requirement, but they would not be able to have a solarium in their backyard. From my perspective, somebody adding a solarium in their backyard is not really visible from the street and doesn't really change the look of a house or the look of the town.
Well, I don't have any strong feelings one way or the other. I'm just trying to understand what you're trying to do. But it sounds very much to me as though you've taken the second step first. You've decided what tool you want to use without at least communicating what the problem you're trying to address is. If it were my project, I would start off by having a consultation to identify the specific issues, the specific problems which need to be resolved. And then, and only then, I would look at the tools available to me to see which would best solve those specific problems with a minimum of risk.
Okay, so look, I appreciate the comments. I mean, I think we were very clear on what type of issues we're encountering, and this is the first step in a process. You mentioned public consultation, and that's what we're doing tonight. And I want to reiterate that no decision has been made. When we get to the end of this process, it can take a drastic turn. It could change tremendously. But at the onset, you have to start with something. You have to start with an idea, and then you work on that idea. Maybe there's better ways of doing it. Maybe we're missing something. But that's why we're having this, and that's why we're having an urban planning firm look at it.
My primary point was, before you decide on what tool you're going to use, make sure that you've got an agreement on the problem. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Do I have to give my name?
If you'd like, it's up to you.
Sure. Adriana Kotler. I live on Albion. And driving around, I've been away for a few months, and driving around, I notice a lot of monster homes. You reassured me that this measure that we're discussing is not going to change the height, the setback, the green space, all the other norms that old Hampstead used to have. How do you explain so many very large homes being built now as opposed to 10 years ago? What has changed? And I'm very concerned with the look of old Hampstead that was based on a green city, charming, old Hampstead was, it has a certain charm.
Okay. Thank you for the question, and I think this is a much broader discussion as to, are we comfortable with the current restrictions now? Forget about the 52% to 80% FSI, because what you're bringing forward now is not about what this will do in the future. You're saying over the past 10 years, there's too many larger homes. So the question now becomes, are we comfortable with having 35-foot homes and homes that can have a 40% footprint, homes that must adhere to 35% minimum green space? Are you suggesting that we should look at reducing the current exterior bylaws?
I'm suggesting that there's something happening that gives Old Hampstead a look that is contradictory and denies what Old Hampstead used to be. I understand the land is expensive and people want to build every inch and they want to maximize their space. But I think the character of Hampstead is already changing, Old Hampstead. And I don't know, you say that this measure that we're discussing is not going to affect any of these things. It's only an interior measure to reallocate the space within the house. But I'm very concerned with the look of Old Hampstead. And I would like to know if other municipalities, like what are how are Westmount homes being developed? Do they allow such huge homes on a relatively, on certain land? I'd like to know, how does Old Hampstead compare to other municipalities?
It's a great question, and that's something that we'll bring up with the urban planning experts. I don't know what the technical requirements are in Westmount, but I really want to impress upon you that whatever opinion you have on homes that have been built in Older Hampstead over the past 10 years, it's very important to understand that if those homes were built with allowing them to be 80% FSI, they would not necessarily be larger. As a matter of fact, just because we're proposing to change that a home can now be built to 80% FSI, it doesn't mean that a home can actually maximize that 80% FSI. Because the very first objective criteria is you can only be 40% of your footprint. You can only be 35 feet tall. You have to adhere to the setbacks and so forth. So after doing this, one of these larger homes that you speak of might only be able to have a 60% FSI. But from a design and an architectural perspective, and I could tell you, and if you speak to anybody who has gone through the process, and the PAC gets about a dozen projects each month or so, one little change, you change a room here, a door there, a bathroom here, a staircase there, whatever, one little change has a domino effect on the rest of the layout. This just gives the homeowner and the architects a little wiggle room on how they're going to navigate on the inside.
Okay, I just want to express my concern with the feel of Old Hampstead with all these very large homes being built. And I trust you that the process will be transparent and participatory, and you'll consult experts to understand the impact of this measure.
Absolutely, and I want to reiterate what I said at the beginning. At the end of the day, it's not going to be the people on this side of the table that will decide. Ultimately, it's going to be the residents, whether they want to see this through or not.
Thank you.
Hi,
hello.
My name is Ron Ryder. I'm a New Hampstead citizen, and I'm currently building a home. And I'm presently in conflict with the new law. That you're not in conflict. I mean, the old law has created some problems for me.
Current law. Sorry.
The current law that has created some problems for me that would address my situation personally. And I can really see how my house presently is about 3,500 square feet. I have 5 kids, and I'm trying to build 5 rooms upstairs. With the current law, I'm still gonna have 3,500 square feet home, but I'm not able to build my 5 bedrooms. I can only build 4 bedrooms. So from the outside, there's no difference whatsoever to my house. The only difference is that I'm not able to add that room in my floor. I have to, like you said, create a big hole in the middle of the house, reducing the usable square footage of the home. So it's really, I don't see how this new law would impact the visual aspect of the house.
Thank you very much for sharing, and that's a prime example, and that's why council initially voted unanimously to move forward on this. And again, we are going to be sure on that there is no exterior visual impact. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hello.
do I say my name?
It's up to you if you want.
Cynthia Mayoff, 121 Finchley. I'm a resident in the town for 30-odd years. My husband's family, and he's grown up there for many years. He's there since his whole life. He's been there since he's 5 months old. And just sort of reflecting on what you're discussing, obviously the visuals are the most important thing. On Finchley, we have certain houses that have come up around us that, not even directly across, but on streets around, that are like not sort of in keeping with old Hampstead and the taste of what we would like to see around us. And it's disturbing, you know. I mean, that's the bottom line. Every time you're going to sort of make exceptions and houses get larger and larger, it's not the vision, I think, of the Hampstead we know and the Hampstead we want to see. And it's not that we want to deny anyone their opportunity to live and build a home how they like, but Hampstead has a certain taste level that we've become accustomed to, and it's unattractive to see things that are ultra modern or ultra large, take up too much of the land, and it just doesn't make the neighborhood feel in the taste level that we've been accustomed to. No, I mean, I don't know the particulars, but I just know, like, I've heard a lot of talk about it in the last few weeks. And we want Hampstead to be Hampstead. We don't want to be Côte Saint-Luc behind the mall.
I agree with you completely, and everybody sitting around this table agrees with you. Nobody wants to change the look of the town, and we really believe that what we're presenting forward does not change the look of the town. What you brought forward is part of what I was speaking to the lady earlier, a much larger discussion. Do we want to change the current setbacks, the current footprints, the maximum height? Those are all exterior issues from what you're addressing. This specifically deals with an interior issue.
Okay, like, I have no issue. It's just interior, but I think we all know what we're talking about when we say that behind the mall.
Sure. So just before the next person comes up, it's 8 o'clock, and we're going to continue this consultation meeting, but we're just going to adjourn it and then immediately reopen the actual council meeting. But you'll be able, we're going to stay on this topic. So I need a councillor to move for adjournment, please.
Councillor Schaefer.
Seconded by Councillor Schaefer. It's adjourned at 8 p.m. And now we will open up the regular council meeting. It is proposed by Councillor Schaefer, seconded by Councillor Elfassi, and resulted the agenda of the regular council meeting is hereby adopted as presented. Apologize for that formality, but please.
Hi, my name is Adam Weinstock. I guess one question which you partially answered was, you said that at the previous council meeting you did make a change to the calculation of FSI. So I guess my question is, if you're talking about dealing with solariums or things of that nature, would it not be able to make a more specific bylaw that deals with the FSI calculation relating to the attic or to a solarium? Because it strikes me that increasing the FSI calculation from, we're talking about a 50% increase in the FSI calculation, which strikes me as quite large. It might solve some problems today, but create bigger problems down the road that are outside of simply the inside of people's houses.
Okay, no, I appreciate the question, and my immediate reaction to that is when you're trying to give a specific solution to a specific issue, sometimes it could backfire, and I'll give you an example of what I mean. So we changed the definition of FSI to exclude attics. Now, we're going to have to actually look at what that means. I mean, everyone here generally knows what an attic is. But there will come a time when a project is presented before PAC, and the homeowner is saying, okay, it's attic space. How do you define what attic space is? Going to what you said about the solarium and an addition or something. If we're going to add solarium to the definition of, to exclude from the definition of FSI, how do you define what a solarium is? If somebody places a bed in there, is it still a solarium? So I think by adding more scope limitations to certain things won't necessarily solve the problem in the long run. I think it'll cause more red tape, more issues with analyzing the files. We need to standardize this and normalize it without changing the look of the town.
Fair, like I said, it's a question of the long term, not the past, but the long term, and sometimes when you standardize and sometimes when you're too general, that's also open to interpretation as well. So being too specific might hurt with red tape, but being too general gives people a little bit too much carte blanche, and that's an opinion, not a question. My other question is, because I am a new resident, is you talk about a process being open and transparent, and that's all fine, but saying that the people on this side of the table would make the decision, just so that I understand, like, what would the process be in terms of having a referendum on this? Like, is that an automatic, or?
Okay, so the room filled up quite a bit since I mentioned this earlier, and I'll say what the process is. And let me start off, right off the bat. Nobody on council wants a referendum. If it got to that point, it would die in its tracks. This is not something that is worthy of a referendum. It's not something that the town should incur costs for. We presented this unanimously because we really thought that it will not change the look of the town, and we really thought it's in the best interests for homeowners. The process is as follows. Last month, we passed a draft bylaw. In previous mandates, council would just pass a draft bylaw, hold a public consultation meeting like we are tonight, pass the second draft bylaw because it's a formality. Pass the second draft bylaw, and at the following council meeting, pass the final bylaw. That, to me, defeats the entire purpose of having a public consultation when you have a ready draft bylaw to pass without even taking into consideration any of the concerns that you just heard at the public consultation meeting. We're not fast-tracking anything. This is going to be a very slow process. When the second draft bylaw ultimately is tabled for passing, we might hold another resolution. We're not required to, but I would like to get as much input from residents as possible. Before we table a second draft bylaw, we're going to have an urban planning firm look at this and validate everyone's concerns and meticulously look at this to make sure that we're doing it right. We're doing our due diligence on this. We're doing our work. I think we owe it to the town and the homeowners to explore this idea if we are right that this will not change the look of the town and it will make it easier for people. That's our job as councillors, as a council. After the second draft bylaw is presented, if it's passed, then it legally there has to be a final. I mean, we can table other draft bylaws if we want to, and then there will be ultimately a final bylaw that will be presented. And if that's passed, there will be a register that would open for anybody who is opposed to what is presented and passed. 434 signatures would be required to trigger a referendum. And if 434 signatures are signed up, we don't need a referendum to tell us this is not the right path to go.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well,
Oh, I'm sorry, but did you intend to, did you want to speak? So go ahead, go ahead.
Have you thought about the effect it has on backyards? Like the way your place looks like to your neighbors. It's not just the people driving down your street, but it's how your house looks from the back. And you say, well, a solarium. Well, there's all kinds of definitions of a solarium. And better be careful.
yeah, that's one of the things why I wasn't so keen on adding definitions or specific exclusions to the FSI. Now, I want to reiterate that with regards to the rear setbacks, we are not changing what is currently permitted. Somebody can add an addition, an extension, a solarium in their backyard now if they meet the exterior restrictions.
Really?
Absolutely.
There's a house near my house. The backyard goes practically to the property line. The front goes practically to the property line. The stairs are yay steep. I don't know.
Is
That doesn't sound like old Hampstead
this a
to
new
me.
construction or an older construction?
Sorry?
Is it a new construction or an older, a new construction? So if you're telling me that the setbacks were already maxed out, by changing the FSI would not make that house any larger because it's already at the maximum.
Okay. So it's past the maximum.
I don't know about that.
My name is Mouni Shanazi. I live on 5590 Queen Mary Road. I'd like to get your opinion on the letter that the former mayor sent to the suburban, and I think most people here have read it. He actually criticizes you because you did not go to the PAC with this issue. And I wanted to hear your reason for not having gone to that.
So, first, for those who are unfamiliar, let me explain what the PAC is. The PAC is Planning and Advisory Committee. This is a committee, mainly volunteers who live in Hampstead. Consists of, could be interior designers, architects, builders, engineers. It's people who have experience building homes. And the purpose of that committee is to look at individual projects that are brought forward and to give council a recommendation on whether we should approve it or not. There are objective criteria and subjective criteria. Objective criteria meaning a house can only be 35 feet, it can only have a maximum footprint of 40% and so forth. Then there's subjective criteria, which is open to interpretation. What color house do you want to have? Does it match? Does it fit in well with the surrounding properties and so forth? And that is the role of the PAC. The PAC is not urban planners. They don't look at the town as a whole. They look at individual projects to provide recommendations. Having said that, once we have a second draft ready, which may differ from the first draft, we will certainly be presenting it to the Planning Advisory Committee to see a number of things. One is, like the issue I raised before, if we're going to exclude attics from the definition of FSI, how will that impact their decision-making process? Will it be easy for them to define and identify what an attic is. And then they're going to give other commentary concerns, similar to the way that everyone here brought forward tonight. But our goal is to do this in a proper process, not fast track it. So with regards to what you were saying, we're absolutely going to be presenting it to the PAC. I just didn't feel that it was the right point in time. I want to make sure that we have a solid draft before we present it. I don't think doing it twice is the right way to go. Absolutely.
I would just add, building on what the mayor said, indeed, the PAC does look at a streetscape, and the PAC is, taking a holistic approach to when they're evaluating projects, the integration of such projects into the surrounding environment. So I think just if that's maybe a small correction, while the PAC is typically sitting there and reviewing individual files, the PAC is certainly looking at the big picture as well. And the council actively uses them as a resource and highly values the input of the PAC members, without a doubt. I think, as the mayor said, we're just so preliminary in the process that we haven't gotten to the point where it was warranted just to have that conversation yet. There's, between 12 to 15, sometimes 20 files that are brought to the PAC where these members of the community that are architects, engineers, urban planners, although nobody on the PAC is an urban planner, are taking the time out of their days, essentially volunteering after a full day of working as a professional to evaluate projects for residents. And if you're a resident that's submitting a project where you're you're looking for PAC input and ideally their acceptance of your project, to take away from that process and add an extra hour or 2 hours, pulling it away from individual files and talking about the big picture when we're not there yet, is the reason that the mayor didn't want to bring it to the PAC just yet. We absolutely will be bringing it to the PAC. We absolutely value the PAC's input, and without a doubt is going to be an integral component of moving forward with this process in conjunction with an urban planning firm, as well as the council and the community's input. So just to reassure everybody that they will be consulted and they will be part of the process as we move forward after this.
Thank you, Councillor Budnick. Please just come forward, speak to the microphone, because it's being recorded for the urban planners.
No, it's because the former mayor basically kind of said that if you had gone to the PAC, they would have told you that you can't go ahead with this.
With all due respect, the former mayor went to the PAC about building 12-story buildings, and they said no, and he still went forward with it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. No, I'm happy that you're saying this, because I mean he sort of was trying to use the PAC as an example of him being in the right to say what he said.
Is there any councillor at this point in time that wants to share any comments on anything that has been brought forward, or should we move forward? All right, let's continue.
Just one thing, basically, at the end of the day, from my point of view, I can't speak with regards to everybody else, from my point of view, I'm a finance guy. I don't know which questions I should be asking and what could be happening. So that's why I'm really looking forward to hearing from the urban planning experts and hearing from PAC and saying, what are the unintended consequences? Everybody has great motivations, everybody has a great idea, this is what we want, but what is it that I don't see? What is it I don't understand? And until I can actually understand from the experts what it is that could possibly happen, if there's a very clever architect who looks at it and says, oh, I can do this now, and we didn't expect that, I need to be able to hear that and have it bulletproof before we go ahead with anything. So that's just where I stand.
I agree.
And just quick point, Jeremy.
Yeah, just speaking into the microphone.
Yes, I actually agree very much with, and I think also that's the idea of the entire council. At the end of the day, we need the PAC to really look at this and give us a recommendation, as you also mentioned it, and the PAC also look at it as just Councillor Edery mentioned, from a point of view, an angle that we may not see it. Those are professionals. They deal with those issues day in, day out, and their advice and recommendation is very valued. And we will surely look into that when the time comes, if we get there. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to reiterate, as Councillor Alfasi said, I mean, at least Harvey's a lawyer, I'm in finance, Councillor Eden is in finance, the mayor is in finance, Leon's in real estate, Michael's in, working in Waldorf. I mean, the Jason Farber's in finance. None of us are urban planners, architects, engineers. We don't profess to be experts in this domain, and we certainly will be using the guidance of professionals to guide the decision-making process. I can almost speak for everybody in that, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Except my title, but yeah.
Hi.
Please.
My name is Eleni Vines, and I don't want to belabor the point because other people have already expressed it, but I just want to say that, as I said to you when we spoke on the phone, that my family moved to Hampstead 7 years ago, and we moved here for a reason, because we liked the look of Old Hampstead. And I do feel that even in the 7 years that we've been here, that there are changes that are happening incrementally, that old homes are being torn down, new houses are being put up. Some of them are charming, some of them are massive, and the really massive ones I don't think are in keeping with Old Hampstead. And I have a question for you. Is there any differentiation between, in terms of building, what you can build, between Old and New Hampstead?
Thank you for the question. And before I answer that, I'll just address the first point that you mentioned. And again, it was brought up before. That is part of a larger discussion. Do we want to change the exterior requirements? But again, that's not the crux and the focus of tonight. With regards to your question, yes, there is a significant change between RA1 and RA2, which is Old Hampstead and New Hampstead. And the change is that in New Hampstead, you're allowed 80% FSI, and you're restricted to 52% in Old Hampstead. But I want to mention one other very important thing. Even though the FSIs are different in both zones, all of the exterior requirements are the same. The setbacks, the footprint, the green space, all of that is the same. So really what we're trying to accomplish is to allow a homeowner more flexibility on what they could do on the inside of their house.
Right. Although, and I'm still having trouble understanding the idea of you have the exterior, you have the building. What you do on the inside, you're doing within the walls of the building, as you said, really shouldn't matter to anybody else living in Hampstead. But if you're building bigger, if you're just reconfiguring inside, that's one thing, and I don't think that people will view that as a problem. But if you're building bigger, I don't see that you can build bigger without building either down or building up or building out.
So I mentioned this earlier, just because the proposed bylaw is that a homeowner would be able to build 80% FSI, doesn't mean that they'll be able to achieve it. Because the first restriction are the exterior requirements. We're not changing that. We're not changing how tall a building can be. We're not changing the setbacks. So even though someone would maximize that in the current bylaw, and the way it's drafted right now, they can maximize it. But by allowing them to configure the home that they want on the inside is not going to change the fact that they've already maxed out the outside.
Okay, and just one last thing. If I understood correctly, did you say that the difference between Old and New Hampstead was the FSI?
Correct.
But are you not asking now to raise the FSI presumably in Old Hampstead as well to that same number, 82%?
Correct. That's.
So then there will be no difference.
By passing this, there would be no difference.
By passing this, there will be no difference made in what can be built and between Old and New Hampstead.
But just to be clear, there currently is no difference on what could be built on the exterior. In both zones, they're identical on how you, let's call it a box. A house is a box. What that box looks like on the outside, right now, it's identical. What we're trying to do is give a homeowner more flexibility what you do on the inside of the box. Right now, the boxes are the same in both zones on what they can do.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, but theoretically, if you
Just
had a...
speak into the microphone.
I just think, theoretically, if you had a home in Old Hampstead that is 52% of FSI and it was all on the first floor, right? Then theoretically, you could go from 52 to 80%, and you would increase the overall volume. So on the outside, it would change.
It would be impossible for that to happen, because that means you would have a 52% footprint. If you have one floor with...
Okay, so, if you had the 40% footprint, right?
Okay, yep.
If you had the 40% footprint on one floor,
Yep.
theoretically, you could then go up to 2 floors and increase the overall volume. So the outside would change. You wouldn't be changing any of the setbacks, but you'd be within the 80% FSI. So it wouldn't just change what happens inside, it would change the overall volume of the house from the outside.
So, but that's the example that I gave earlier. In the current bylaws, if somebody had a 40% bungalow and they wanted to add a floor on top, on the exterior, they can do that. But they would have to have a 20-foot dining room, because we're not allowing them to complete the inside of the house the way they want. So in the current bylaws, they could still add a second floor at 40%.
If I could, I think that what Councillor Edwards is trying to point out, if you use...
Talking to the mic.
Sorry, if you use your example of 40% on floor 1 and you want to build up, just put a second floor on top of it, you'll achieve the 80% by having 40% and 40% on the second floor. That, from what I gather from what Councillor Edwards said, will change the image, what this lady mentioned about the look of the house from the outside once you get up to the second floor. So the look will definitely be different.
Right.
And I think what we're hearing tonight from several people is that they're concerned about the exterior look of what's happening in Old Hampstead. That's what I heard from several people tonight.
If I could just add one comment, just to address the question. The town has a bylaw, I believe it's bylaw 775, called the Site Planning Architectural Integration Program, the SPAIP. That program has identified, essentially, for all intents and purposes, 2 main zones in Hampstead, Old Hampstead and New Hampstead. And when you're going about renovating a home or potentially building a new home, you are supposed to follow the guide and those criteria, which do dictate small but relatively different things for each side of the community. And when I say relatively different, generally speaking, it should be the same, but I'll just give you an example. Work on exterior materials, prioritize restoration rather than replacement. That's something that's noted for Old Hampstead, but not necessarily New Hampstead. If an exterior covering is to be replaced, the same material as the original or a similar replacement should be used. That's in reference to Old Hampstead, not New Hampstead. So there certainly is efforts to preserve the architectural integrity and characteristics of the existing built-up environment, and not saying go out and it's a free-for-all, do as you wish. That is why we have the PAC, so that you can't just do as you wish. But there is certainly a bit more leniency as you move towards New Hampstead than Old Hampstead. We are certainly looking to preserve and to make sure that it's not ruined as we move forward, the Old Hampstead environment.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes.
Hi, Derek Stern.
Welcome.
21 Lincroft. To give everybody reference who I am, you all probably know me by Mr. Bill Steinberg's email that was sent to everybody, and he made reference to a home on the corner of the walking path and Lincroft. That is my personal home. And I'd like everyone to know what the mayor said in his email is 100% categorically wrong. And let me explain in layman's terms and as plain English. When I built my home, you have a volume, a box. Call it a shoebox. That shoebox that I built was the largest shoebox I could build. The only difference in the FSI that I was allowed to build and what I couldn't build was, as the mayor said, you need a 20-foot high dining room. I have a 20-foot high family room. I couldn't build in my attic, but I was able to build the volume of the home. So basically, my living space was diminished. My home could not be bigger in volume than what it is today if you were to change the bylaw. This gentleman here has the perfect example. He has 5 children. I have 4 children. If I had a 5th child, I wouldn't be able to put that 5th bedroom in. So you have to understand that the 80% rule, no one's going to get to 80%. Maybe change it from 80 to 70. People will have this vision that 70 is less than 80. But please understand, if any architect was sitting here right now, besides being a homeowner, I'm a real estate developer, and I build all my life. So I know what I'm talking fact. And there's no secret that me and the ex-mayor never got along and we butted heads all the times because whatever he told me was usually wrong. So in this particular case, I can vouch for you that what he used as my home, as an example, was completely and utterly false. And I can get architects to give you those facts and back it up if need be. But understand, this poor gentleman here is going to suffer. By doing this, your houses are not going to get bigger. You have to still respect the setback. You have to respect the height. So trust me, I wanted a big home. My home is at the setbacks in the front, the back, the sides, the height. That's not going to change. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's absolutely correct.
So the only thing that's changing is what you do inside that square, that volume. You're shrugging your shoulders.
No, she's saying, so who cares? I don't care.
So my point is, we're sitting here kvetching and kvetching and kvetching for no reason. So my point is, everybody has their back up against the wall for the wrong reason. You will not change the size of the house. He's not changing the setback. He's not changing the height. He's changing the FSI. So
you keep looking at me. I don't even know what's going on here.
Doug, he likes your pretty face, Doug.
No, so my point is, for this woman who lives on Albion, the house will not be bigger. What they're changing will not make the house bigger. My house, people love it, people hate it. But my home is large on the volume. The inside, I had to suffer by doing high ceilings and everything to meet the FSI.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry?
Why is it a discussion?
Why is it what?
A discussion.
That's the whole thing. It shouldn't be a discussion because the house will not be bigger.
I will answer that. It's a very good question. And if there's a counselor that wants to address this, by all means. There's been reference made to some information that was put out by the former mayor, and it instilled a lot of fear in people, and it was misguided, and there was misinformation, and it was wrong. And I'm happy that it pulled in people here that might not have come otherwise, so you really understand what it is that we're trying to do. But to answer your question, I think that's why it's become a discussion, because there was confusion based off of the misinformation. I want to thank you for sharing your story, and that's basically the reason why I think, and if any other counselor wants to speak for themselves, this would be in the best interest for Hampstead and the best interest for a homeowner. Thank you. Anyone else? Any counselor? No. Okay. Any other questions? I think, are we done with the FSI? And just to reiterate, the next step is, we will now engage an urban planning firm. They're going to listen to all of this, listen to concerns. Everything will get addressed.
So yeah, I have a question about the urban planner. How long will the urban planner be employed for, and what are the services that are they going to like actually be looking at? Because if there's like one thing that I think like I keep hearing that I know that I definitely agree with too, is that a lot of people here are deeply unhappy with the monster houses. And yeah, just that, like, you know, are they only going to be looking at the issue of the FSI, or are they also going to be looking at the monster houses and how we can prevent that? Because I know that when I hear that regulations are going to be lessened instead of made more strict to deal with this issue, I know I definitely feel a sense of anxiety about that.
Okay, thank you. So just to clarify, we're not hiring an urban planner like in town employee. We have a director of urban planning who's here tonight. What we are giving a mandate for is for a specific scope assignment on whether changing the FSI from 52% to 80% will change the look of the town. I've said this multiple times, and every councillor will agree with me. Nobody wants to change the look of the town. What currently is in place in terms of the exterior is not changing. With regards to your comment about monster homes and so forth, I think it's part of a much larger discussion that needs to be had. We're up for a master plan in about 2 years, and now is the time where we should start getting input from everybody on how do we deal with our master plan. And just for anyone who doesn't know what a master plan is, it basically deals with, you know, the overall look of the town for the next 25 years and so forth. And every 10, 15 years it gets renewed.
So the urban planner that is going to be hired by the city is only going to be looking at the FSI and will not be looking at any of these other issues? Because I feel like the FSI goes back into the larger issues.
So the urban planner will not look at changing the setbacks or the 35 height requirement or the 40% footprint. It's part of a much larger discussion with regards to the master plan going forward. I personally believe by doing this, it will preserve the look of the town. And allow me to explain. A lot of the homes, especially some that were built in 1935, and for those who are not aware, there are a lot of older homes in Hampstead, a lot of homes on Dufferin, old side of, we'll call it RA2, or the old side of, RA1, the old side of Hampstead on Dufferin. A lot of those homes go back to the 30s. If you calculate the FSI now, a lot of those homes are 75%, not 52%. A lot of those homes have setbacks that have acquired and grandfathered rights that extend very close to the property lines. By doing this, we would preserve those current homes as they are and allow someone to add an addition in the back. They wouldn't lose their setbacks, they wouldn't have to change they wouldn't have to tear it down to build a bigger house. So it is possible, and again, nobody here is an expert in urban planning. These are all hypotheses, all theories. We're going to validate and look through everything, but it's very possible that they might come back and say, by doing this, you're allowing people to use the existing homes, dissuade people from demolishing homes, and build into the back, which in my opinion would preserve the look of the town, not change it.
I mean, I don't really think it's just looking, my concern isn't just that people would be building into the back, but that it would change the facade of the homes, because I do think that people keep trying to press their luck, and they will build and change their homes up to that 80%, right? And maybe that's just no, it's absolutely my layman's opinion is just a person who walks around Hampstead with her dog 3 hours a day. But like, yeah, no, just this. If you change the 80%, I know that you keep describing it as a box, but it just seems like if you allow people to yeah, and I'm sorry, this is not coming out properly now, but just really that the facade would change.
I mean, Mr. Stern made a very valid point before, that he maximized his exterior space. But because of the FSI, he was limited with what he was able to do on the inside. And that's basically the point that we're trying to drive home. We are not changing what somebody can do on the outside. That's already there. We're not allowing somebody to build a larger home. What we're doing by this is allowing them to reconfigure the inside of their home the way they see fit.
Sorry, because I feel like I'm misunderstanding this, because by reconfiguring the inside, I don't mean just make things larger, I mean just change the outside facade of the house. And that doesn't just mean change the, just like how much space there is inside, but just like the actual look.
We're not changing anything on the outside. There's nothing in the.
Maybe, if I might.
Go ahead, please.
It seems to me that people are afraid of changing the FSI because we're afraid of what might happen. And we don't know what might happen. So I think what's important is we need to either have the urban planners tell us what are all the possibilities of changing this, and what are the consequences, and what are the unintended consequences. And then maybe we take a look at it and say, hey, you know what, I want to change the inside. So rather than changing the FSI, maybe we look at it and say, I'm just going to define the maximum volume, and then what you do on the inside, I don't care, kind of thing. So that's something that we need to look at. So what we're trying to say is, I want to have a maximum volume, I don't care what you do on the inside, but we're changing the FSI, and that's got a lot of people kind of questioning. It's got me questioning. I'm wondering, like, what exactly am I missing here? And I want to hear it from the urban planners to tell me what it is I'm missing. And maybe they'll say, yeah, it should be that way. Or maybe they'll say, you know what, don't mess with the FSI, just define the outside volume and say whatever you want to do on the inside, so long as it's not dangerous or crazy, do it. So, but that's something that still needs to be seen. But the problem is when we're talking about FSI, people automatically think, wow, if you're changing the FSI from 50 to 80, you're going to wind up with bigger houses. Nobody wants bigger houses. The question is, how do we get to the point where I can do what I want on the inside, maximize my livable space on the inside without changing my space on the outside? And if the FSI is a tool, then we'll do that. If the FSI is not the tool, then we'll use some other tool. But the point isn't to wind up with the huge houses. Nobody wants to have that. That's not what we're here about. It might be the wrong tool, but I'm not an expert enough to know that, so I need to hear it from the experts to say, what is the best tool for doing what we want to do, which is changing the inside. And I think most of the people here are not experts, so when we start talking about, except for maybe Derek, when we start talking about changing the FSI, it worries us because we don't know what the unintended consequences are. So I think we need to hear from the actual experts to know that we're not making any mistakes. That's just what I would say.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. Please, please into the microphone because it's being recorded.
Excuse me for asking a dumb question.
There's no dumb question.
What is a definition of an FSI?
So FSI stands for floor space index, and it basically says depending on the lot, the size of your lot, you are limited with the amount of living space you can have on the inside of your house. So to give a very easy example, if somebody had a 10,000 square foot lot, in the current bylaws, that means that you can have rooms, livable rooms in your house of 5,200 square feet.
Above grade.
Above grade, correct. So it doesn't include your basement. Now it's not going to include your attic. So it just means what you can do on the inside of your house.
Oh, so if I change from my maid's room into a bathroom,
I don't know if bathrooms are included. Are bathrooms included in FSI?
Yes,
okay, so bathrooms are included in FSI, but I don't think like an open concept staircase is included. So from my perspective, whether somebody has a grand 20-foot room or an extra bedroom on top of that 20, instead of that 20-foot high room, it doesn't make a difference to us. It's the inside of their home. Sure.
I already spoke, so
You can speak as many times as you want.
Very, very brief. You spoke of larger discussion that needs to take place in Hampstead to address the issue of monster home and the quality of the environment in Old Hampstead. You're speaking about the master plan that may begin in 2 years. I'm just concerned that in these 2 years, while waiting for this to happen, there will be a lot more monster homes, and the character of Old Hampstead will change even more. Is there any way to address these issues earlier? I don't want to change the whole schedule and critical path of Hampstead. But if it's enough of a concern for 40 people,
generally, a master plan is not changed before it's due for renewal, and I mean we looked at that. I looked at it with a lawyer on how that would work out, and apparently it wouldn't work out so well because the master plan has to be submitted to the City of Montreal, and they would come back with many questions as to why are you changing the master plan before it's up for renewal, and it would cause delays, and it would cause more problems than what we would be trying to achieve.
But maybe there's some consultation that can take place in advance of the master plan, regardless of the
absolutely.
pathway. If it's an issue of importance.
Absolutely, and I mentioned that before, that even at the last meeting, that now is the time to start giving us input for a master plan. So, send me an email, or you could call me and, tell me, give me your input on what you would like to see, and we're going to take all of this. But unless people voice their concerns and give us input.
But I think it has to be more of a structured effort. You can't just say, email me about your concern. You have to focus this discussion.
Absolutely, but it's a little bit preliminary to do that right now. The purpose of tonight was to deal with a specific issue.
I understand.
And we're also very new into this mandate, and there's many items on the agenda. Some are more of an urgent matter than others, especially when you deal with the timeline, dealing with something 2 years from now, as opposed to something that we have to deal with this summer. There's generally a time frame.
But the rhythm of development in Hampstead is so quick that, by the time this happens, there'll be another cycle.
There's a flip side to that also. It also speaks to, that's the new norm, and, whether you don't want to hear that or not, a homeowner has a right to build a home within the existing bylaws that are currently in place.
I'm here for the tennis, but I'm a real estate broker. My family developed New Hampstead. They bought the golf course back in the late 50s. You didn't know that, eh? We built the Clive, the old Hampstead pool back in the day. We gave it to them. Anyways, I think the confusing thing is for the ladies here is simple. I love Derek's house. Love your house, Derek. Is that when you have existing bylaws for setbacks and height, and you have houses built in the 60s, they're under that volume. So you can increase that volume by tearing down the house, using the existing setbacks and height, and all you're changing now is the interior. But you can't confuse that with house built in 1954. That's a small house, but the lot's big enough. You can knock it down and build a bigger home with the existing bylaws. I think that's what you're sort of skating around.
Okay, that's a valid point. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Anyone else? Please. Yeah, well, okay, are we done with the FSI? Okay, great. Let's move on. Any other questions? Please, come forward.
The update on the tenants, the contract, when?
Yes. Okay. So We received on April 20th, the public tendering project was closed. We received 2 bids. The lowest conforming bid came in at just over $1.7 million. It is an overall increase to date of about $800,000 from what was originally projected.
Welcome to the real estate world.
So, council obviously has been discussing this at great lengths on what to do, and one of the things that we're looking at to offset this huge cost increase is advertising and sponsorship rights at the court. It's not going to be done in a tacky manner. It would be done in a very tasteful manner, like anybody who watches professional tennis. It'll be very subtle and simple, built in. But if we could bring in, I don't know, over the life of the courts, $1 million of revenue and sponsorship to offset this cost, council would have a much easier time digesting this.
Even easier if it's 2.
Sorry?
I said even easier if it's 2.
Even easier if it's 2. One other thing that we're looking at now is how to incorporate pickleball into this. And I know we've received a lot of requests to incorporate pickleball. The reason why we haven't yet made a decision on what to do with pickleball, or how to incorporate it, or where to put it, is obviously tennis was a priority. And do we incorporate pickleball into the tennis courts, or do we have them separate in another area of the land? Obviously, the decision that we make on tennis will have an impact on where and how we're going to deal with pickleball. I will tell you this, though, very shortly, within the next few weeks, we will have 3 pickleball courts set up on the where?
On the
By the basketball courts. We're going to be putting pavement down and painting, and we're going to make it as nice and as playable as we can. We're going to upgrade it, but that's more of a temporary solution until we get to. Okay, great, thank you. So that's more of a temporary solution. One thing that council is exploring with tennis is, do we convert 2 of the tennis courts into hardcore, is that right? Hardcore courts to, let me just finish before you hear the idea. So the idea is to convert 2 clay courts into 2 hardcore courts, which are interchangeable between tennis and 4 pickleball courts. Right. So, I mean, the other option is, do we convert parking lot, the parking lot on Lincroft to pickleball courts?
Not Lincroft. This side.
Sorry, on Hampstead. We're dealing with issue. We don't want to lose the green space that's on Lincroft. 2 parking spots for 2 separate parking lots for a park. Is it necessary? Would this encourage people to walk to the park more, or park on the street? There's a lot of parking on the street. So these are the things that we're looking at. We are getting, I think, this week, information on whether we're able to convert the current bid into an option of changing the 2 clay courts to 2 hard courts to integrate with pickleball. These are options we're exploring. Councillor Alfasi, you've been looking in charge of tennis. If there's anything you want to add that I missed?
Yeah, I'd like to be the first one to make a comment. I've been always one of the councillors who always supported and pushed for tennis. I think it'll be a mistake if we will convert any of the 10 courts, as is the 10 courts, is not enough. As I mentioned in council, the whole week is quite busy, except Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon. We have many options to satisfy the pickleball community and keep the tennis as the 10 court as they are. So I think it'll be important for us to maintain that situation and work with the pickleball community. And one other point, and I'm going to make it short, I think I strongly suggest to proceed. As Derek mentioned before, welcome to the real estate world. We know what we have at hand now with the lowest bidder. We don't know what we will have in the next bid if we go out for a new bid. The way I see it, it for sure will come more than 1.7 and more, and 1,700,000. So I would strongly encourage my co-councilors, my friend here, to possibly move forward and grant the contract to the lowest bidder so we can have those finally courts, tennis court in place, playable ASAP. That's my statement.
Thank you, Councillor Alfasi. So,
thank you.
Just to reiterate what Councillor Alfasi says, there's two schools of thought right now in council. Do we accept the current bid that was presented to us, or do we go back to tender with a completion? By the way, the current bid that is before us would have a completion date of mid-July. If we started now, the courts would be completed by mid-July. The other option that council is exploring is if we go back to tender with a completion date of 2023, would that lower the cost? That's really where I guess the focus on council is right now.
You have to come to the mic.
Derek had his.
Sorry.
Dad, you gotta come to the mic.
With your hand up back there?
Yeah, you gotta come to the mic.
Derek had his hand up.
No, I know, but I'm saying to let him come up behind you.
Okay, just come forward.
So, two things. Maybe you could bring to light to the people sitting around this room as to what happened to the original contract for the tennis courts. That's number one. Number two, I strongly suggest if you do have this completion date for July, that there should be penalties if they're not completed on time. So I don't know if that's in the contract or not.
Penalties.
Okay, so that's just two things from I really just like to say. But I think it's important that people know what happened because this is before your tenure as being mayor as to why we're not having tennis courts in time.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. And Councillor Alfasi, just as Derek pointed out, this was before my time. You know much more in detail about the events before, so maybe you can give a summary of.
Point to Derek what happened from the last committee meeting, tennis committee meeting. We went radio silent after that. We were all corralled for a couple of meetings. Went radio silent. What happened from the last meeting in terms of costs and plans to now that got here?
Okay, so we'll get right back to that. You want to address what Derek?
Well, Derek basically asked the question, the history with Marival, the company who won the bid, the previous bid, in the previous mandate. Make long story short, a combination of issues, COVID, the contractor got ill with COVID, if I understand the poor guy, he is no longer alive. And he started the work, and after he started the work, he kind of disappeared. We never seen him. 6 weeks later, we called him to find out. So we were in a mess. So we saw that this is going to be a lengthy battle. So we had to find a termination to that contract. And that's what we did. We did everything possible to terminate the contract and start fresh. And that's exactly what we are today. To answer Richard's question, from the last meeting we had in February, 4 months ago, to today, we rewrote the whole tender document. It's a very extensive document, costly, and we had to go to tender. I mean, there was really nothing much that we could do. At the same time, we've been negotiating with Marival to really have an amicable agreement, because otherwise we would have been in a legal fight for who knows how long, and we don't even know what would that cost to the town. So we had to close that page and that issue and start with a new tender document, which we did, and then the mayor just mentioned that we do have 2 bidders now. The lowest bid is a little over than $1.7 million, and now the council is studying what we should do from this point on going forward.
Can I just clarify? I just wanted to be clear, the number $1.7 million has been repeated a few times. Just to be very clear, it's not $1.7 million. $1.7 million is the amount of the tender, but we have to add to that an extra $525,000 because there are costs that are sunk into it. There's part of the deal with Moraval, so the total cost that we're looking at is not 1.7, it's more in the 2.2, 2.25 million range. Just be clear.
Okay, the answer to that is very simple. The question is Mount Royal Courts, who did the courts, right? There was the same company who are really actually in this bid document, but they've been contracted by the winning bidder. So it's a PC Court who did Mount Royal Courts, and they will be the ones to do ours if we will go ahead with this bidder.
So the bidder is contracting with PC Court?
Exactly, because they're the best in Quebec, and they will be the one to do it here once we give the contract.
That being said, the previous contract that we had also had PC Court as a subcontractor, which led to a canceling of the contract anyway. So having them as a subcontractor, as we've seen from the previous contract, is not a guarantee that things are going to work out. Because they were a subcontractor in the previous guys.
Because they don't.
The only service that PC Courts wouldn't do would be the lights.
No, the courts, the clay courts. PC Court do the court. That's their specialty.
He's saying, well, the only thing they don't do is the light.
No, they don't do
Excavation,
yes.
drainage.
Well, the light, the drainage.
No, that's what I'm saying.
There's a lot.
I don't know what the cost separation is in terms of, you know, what the, it seems to me there's a lot of people stepping on the project.
You see, MRTC is a private club. As a private club, they don't bound to rules and regulations like a municipality is. We have to go for a bid for anything over $100,000. And when you go out for bid from municipality, you never know what you're going to end up with. And that is the situation, simple as that. If I was a private club, this would cost way less than 1.7, for sure.
Okay, I've
been watched Davin Sufer. I live on Lincroft, played a lot of tennis. My kids play tennis. My wife plays tennis. Really, I mean, I could go back and we could talk about how kind of heartbreaking it is to see this world we have there of people who get their livelihood from teaching their, kids who teach other kids how to play. This amazing world that we had there and that tennis thing, and they came in with bulldozers in September, October, disappeared, it's gone, and then nothing happens, and now we're looking at a barren field, no clay, no nothing. Like, you can't even play soccer on that field. It's a disaster.
But don't worry, we're going to bring back the same contract.
Hang on. So I'm not here to complain. I'm saying I'm putting that in the past. Let's get beyond that. Let's get beyond the meetings and the discussions about a 2-story complex and all these amazing things. Let's get beyond all of that. We have to rebuild this tennis court. And the more we can discuss and go around in circles, if we can afford it, it's a colossal F-up, frankly, that it should cost this much money to get back to where we were. But I don't see how we can get out of that situation. I don't see how we can contemplate, even pickleball. I love pickleball. I love contemplate anything except getting back to status quo as soon as we can, so we have at least what we lost. And I don't think
One has nothing to do with the other.
maybe not. But every time we talk, the mayor brings it up. He brings up another tender. So back in December, we talked about getting a tender out in February to get the proposals back in and maybe start work early in the spring. Now we're going to reopen it up and discuss maybe there's another process and get pickleball back in, which might be the right move. But keep in mind that we're going to very quickly miss this season, so that's almost foregone.
I guarantee you're missing.
Right, and last time, and last time we said, let's take the time and do it properly. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise. We have an opportunity. The prices went up dramatically. We're probably going to see that happen again. We're going to see more lost time, more lost opportunities to enjoy the space that we have and we had in the past. So I'm against going back to the process of rethinking the position of the courts and where the sun is and what else we could add in this two-story building. Let's get back to status quo. Let's get people playing tennis again. And whether or not we have a drink machine or a pickleball court here or there, I think we have to move on.
So I
don't give away food to clay courts for hard courts. You've got facilities with.
Can I, when you're done, I want to say something.
All right, you want to address that, Councilor Goldwax?
Well, thank you for your comment, David. It's just, what I want to say is a few things. Number one, as Councilor Eder, we talked about with the amounts, and I'm not going to make this a long-winded, 2 years ago, when we talked about this in our PTI, our 3-year planning process, the amount that we allocated was $800,000, which we felt was plenty to do 10 courts. We're not talking about a clubhouse or anything else. We're talking about redoing 10 courts, $800,000 at the time. It then came in at $1.3 million. Oh, much to the shock of most of us, all of us, at $1.3 million. COVID, rising costs, we get it. Oh, we're almost double of what we were at. Now with this late, and I will state for the record, everyone knows this, the company that was chosen, I warned council that they are contractors for pavé uni and asphalt and walls. They are not building courts. Yes, they subcontracted to PC Open, who actually was in each of the bids that we received. We then went out to rebid again after paying $500,000 in penalties and purchasing equipment, which we had to pay off Morrigal, so it added to the cost. And we put out this bid. Just as everyone understands, we had to go public, as Councillor Fassi stated, and there was 9 companies that picked up the bids. We received 2 back. And I can say with almost certainty, because I've spoken to some contractors, that in January and February of 2022, their year is booked already. In the bid, it was requested of a 2022 timeline completion. I can tell you, contractors probably looked at it and said, we can't do this, we're already booked up for the year. We're not even going to bid. So is it possible we could have gotten 2 or 3 other bids out of this if we would have stated that we wanted a 2023 May 15th or May 30th delivery date? Absolutely. Absolutely. So we are now, as we stated, 1.7 plus the 5 into this. As Derek Stearns talks about, and I do property management for the past 30-odd years, I know there's rising costs. But we have to look at this at a point now. We have a blank space, as Mr. Super points out, we have a blank space that we can do something with. How do we make it work? I understand that there are some thoughts about hard courts versus clay and what we do, but do we expand and go into the parking lot and make it, at this point now we have a blank slate, let's do this properly, rather than just again rushing into something. This is what we happened last time. We rushed in to make sure it happens before November 7th election, and I don't want to do this again. This is not my money, this is all of our money, it's taxpayers' money, and I am to be fiscally responsible for everybody. I want to please the residents of Hampstead, but not at any cost. There has to be fiscal responsibility from us as elected officials towards the residents. So this is why we can't just turn around and say, let's just go for it. Just rip off the Band-Aid and go for it. Thank you.
Can I just say one quick note?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Look, Michael, we happen not to think alike, because I do understand where you're coming from. And yes, it is our money, not the councillors, the entire residents' money. However, we know for a fact, it's been like that. I've been a councillor now 16 years, and I've seen tender document. Every time we went back, it came back much more expensive. And it'll be the same case. Unfortunately, whatever decision we make here, we may have to pay more when we go back, as you mentioned before. Look, at the end of the day, neither you and I, or any of us, know what the future holds for us. I'm talking based on past experience. We have a tender document right now that calls for 1,700,000 plus the 500,000 Councilor already mentioned, and I think we know what's going to cost us. You don't know where this is going to take us when we'll be ready with the next one. And then we'll be sitting with everybody around here, and we may be questioned about, well, you guys, you made the wrong decision, like we just did with the previous Marival contract. So it's your view, which I respect. My view is to proceed today, ASAP, with the contract we have. Like Davin said before, it makes a lot of sense. And then we'll deal with the pickleball, because we're lucky enough to be able to provide the pickleball 3 courts in almost no time, and we'll address everybody at each time. That's my point.
Well, Leon answered my question, but I spoke to Mr. Borlax over the winter, and I just don't think he understands the importance of our complex. He keeps talking about numbers, 1.7, he's all having a hard time. He can't even buy a house at Hampstead for 1.7 million. This is a very important complex for us. It's our only jewel we have, and you don't know anything about it. Leo's the only one on the committee here that understands tennis. I had my own club years ago in the Laurentians. I understand about construction. It's not that complicated a thing, and there's a lot of incompetence. I mean, if you knew there was a Pavillini company, why'd you hire the contract then? I mean, PC Court's the key in this contract. They're the key guys. They understand how to make it. I don't know what's else involved. They also know about drainage. They did it before Mount Royal. It's not that complicated a deal. And and we put the pickleball courts either at the front, or I think near the tennis wall might be good for the pickleball courts. Because remember, playing pickleball beside tennis, it's a lot of noise, the pickleball, for the tennis players. It doesn't really match. We have plenty of room in this park for pickleball courts, and that's really popular. So it's a simple solution to figure out.
I just want to add one last point, and then Doc can say his piece. The last point I want to say, Hampstead, the only recreation we provide to our Hampstead resident is this beautiful swimming pool, this amazing park, and the 10 tennis courts. That's the only thing we have here. That's the only thing we have here. We don't have an arena. Yes, exactly. We don't have an ice hockey. We have no gym. We have basically nothing to offer to our resident. That's the only thing we have to offer to our resident. And even that, we must look at it and really think, are we giving service to our resident? And by the way, even if this service is 500 members, by the way, this is the last we saw, 200 household and 500 members in the tennis. Yes, it's out of 7,500 resident, 500 only using, but it's 500 that they're using very important service that they love, and it's been there for so many years, and we hope to see it there for many more years to come.
Leon, and everyone, I don't think there's any, I promised I wouldn't speak tonight because you've all heard from me plenty, but I can't help myself. I don't think there's any doubt that the tennis courts are going to be built, or rebuilt, I should say. I don't think that's really a discussion. The discussion is whether you're going to hope that they'll be ready by mid or end July. Derek doesn't, I agree with Derek, I think we're dreaming. Or otherwise, because you've made arrangements anyhow, I understand, for tennis to be played in Côte St. Luc, which I understand isn't ideal, but it's better than nothing. Otherwise, they'll be ready, hopefully, by May. I do have a question. I'd like to be informed by the tennis people. I really mean it sincerely. Richard, I want you to enjoy your tennis. I grew up here. We always had tennis. But I just have a question because we all took up pickleball, which we all know is a very booming activity today. Many tennis players are migrating over at certain ages or playing both. Wherever we played in Florida, except where there were dedicated courts, there were hard court, and just let me finish my question, there were hard court tennis courts, which I understand, and you can inform me otherwise, I know we're used to clay in Hampstead, but like the US Open and apparently all the big tournaments, or most of the big tournaments, are played on hard courts. So my only question, not to get into a pickle again as we did this round, and not to take away their 2 tennis courts from tennis, but might it not be wise to consider the two hard courts, which I'm sure there are tennis players who may even prefer hard courts, in the event that they're not in time to come fully utilized, that they can be used for pickleball, even if we do build the 2 or 3 or 4 pickleball courts, just to sort of have it available if on an as-need basis. So to have the 10 courts, but what is so wrong with, like they shouldn't be fearful, we don't want to steal the tennis courts, but as a tax-paying resident, thinking long-term, if in fact it has happened with sports, tennis slows down, pickleball picks up, Richard has a bad back, hurts his knee, and decides to start playing pickleball, at least we would have the availability, the option, and without ongoing maintenance of clay, and have the 8 clay. I'm just wondering if that ought not be a serious consideration, just thinking outside of the box and beyond our nose, kind of.
That's thank you, that's why we brought this up.
Can I respond?
Absolutely.
That's not my
Please.
thread, but I'd like to respond. So there's a couple of things. Jeff Friedman. I play tennis regularly. At Côte de Liesse, they have 2 courts that are, as you said, that are converted to pickleball and tennis. It's a mess. There's different lines on it. It makes it very difficult, and the noise, as Richard said.
Let the gentleman finish, please.
Thank you. So I'm just making a comment. Listen, pickleball is the way to go now. I'm all with you. That's great. But I think that, as we said, we should consider the other alternative of building separate pickleball. I don't think the shared pickleball and tennis works that well. It would work if tennis wasn't that popular. Tennis is at an all-time high in popularity. Now that may go down in the next 2 years or 4 years, but right now, I couldn't get a membership at Mount Royal because their membership went from 1,200 to 3,000 this year. So there's a problem with that. But yes, let's build pickleball courts where on the parking lot.
There's no opportunity cost in building it outside of tennis court, right? Like, I don't see what the big deal is. There's no opportunity cost.
So what I did come up here to say, and I like to listen to everyone, and my one question is regarding the tenders. Now, I understand from speaking with Leon a few times and from this discussion that you're mandated or obliged to go with the lowest bid on that went to tender. Is that the case? So if there's a difference of $10,000 on a $2.4 million, I understand that. But what type of reference do we do that we're not in the same, with all due respect, pickle as we were in last year, where we got the wrong contractor who one person gets sick and the whole thing goes to hell in a handbag?
Okay, it's a great question. Let me clarify a few things, and it'll also address why there was a dramatic increase in the cost. Like Councillor Goldwax mentioned earlier, the previous tender was rushed through. It wasn't done properly, it wasn't drafted properly. It was missing items. We had to go back and do an engineering report on the soil for the second tender. That was not done because of the manner and the way it was rushed through the first time. No, I'm talking about the original tender that was with Morival. Because of the way that it was rushed through, That led to some, or, a good part of the discrepancies between what was supposed to be carried out and what the contractor thought was to be carried out. It became a little, I wouldn't say litigious over the past few months, but the administration has spent hundreds of hours with lawyers negotiating with Morival to secure the product that we need to try to be able to have some kind of product ready this summer. So once, at the same time, simultaneously, when we were negotiating with Morival, we made sure, and I made sure, that the new tender document was done meticulously. I think we spent about $25,000 in consulting and legal fees to make sure that this tender document was bulletproof, to make sure that there were milestones that had to be met, to make sure that the new contractor had to have a certain number of experience with building tennis courts. Just to give you an idea of how narrow in scope we made this, there were 9 potential bidders that opened up the document and only 2 submitted bids. Now, some people will say, maybe they didn't have time to submit a bid for this summer. I don't know. There could be a lot of explanations as to what happened. I'm confident with the tender process that was put forth, and to be honest with you, the PC Court was one of the...
On all of them.
The subcontractors on both bids. All this to say, right now we're at a crossroads. There's 2 main issues. After hearing everybody, there's 2 main issues that we collectively have to decide. One is...
Who's we?
The town. We,
You ever signed the document? What's the problem?
Let me finish. Let me finish, and you'll see.
Come on, let him answer.
Yeah, so that's correct, and that's where I'm getting to. So the decision that we have to make, there's basically 2 issues that we have to get around. One is, do we incorporate pickleball into tennis? Yes or no? That's
these tennis courts?
That's correct.
And you guys are with the exception of Leon, Leon, I know there's one can't play courts, but with the exception of Leon, you guys are going to contemplate changing 2 courts of the existing facility to hard.
Let me tell you what the issues are in front of us, and I'm happy to give my view on the matter, and if any counselor wants to give their perspective, I think that's relevant as well. So the first issue is, do we convert pickleball courts into convert tennis courts into pickleball courts? And the second issue is, do we bite the bullet and accept the tender as is, or do we roll the dice and resubmit for tender and try to get a better price for next season? So those are the 2 main issues, and I'll give you my 2 thoughts on the matter. And again, if any other counselor wants to discuss this. Can you
Let the mayor finish. Would you entertain, in terms of how you make a decision, consulting with the membership, with the active membership of the tennis?
Excuse me, but is there a process here?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes. Can I finish my comment, and then the gentleman will ask, please? Okay. Let me just finish my okay. So one, personally, I think we should not incorporate pickleball into tennis. I think we should have 10 tennis courts and separate pickleball courts. When this tennis court redevelopment was first looked at, there were about 200 Hampstead residents that were members. Now that's about 500. So to take away 2 tennis courts when membership is growing, and I think it's going to continue to grow, I don't think is fair to the tennis community. I would like to see, like I said earlier, pickleball courts in Hampstead Park. Again, where exactly it's placed, it's to be determined, but I'm definitely for that. In terms of the cost and the tender, I don't think that prices will go down. If anything, I'm of the opinion that it could go up. It would be my opinion to bite the bullet and offset the costs with a 10-year plan. Let's look at sponsorship and advertising deals to raise $1 million over 10 years. Let's look at the membership fees. I mean, it's $500 for a family membership now. So a family of 6 or 7 that's paying $500 for state-of-the-art courts, is that fair when an individual has to pay, I don't know, what is it, $150, $200 per person? So, you know, these are things that we have to look at. I see this as, if we can recover this investment in a 10-year period, I would like to see it move forward. Council has different perspectives on this. If council wants to express their views, I'm totally okay with that. You can...
Yeah, okay. Unfortunately, we're not starting with a clean slate. I'm sure if we had an unlimited budget, unlimited space, we would accommodate everybody. And I have to really start off by saying, what's bothering me the most, besides all the details, the tender, et cetera, is that there seems to be a tennis side and a pickleball side. And I sit on both sides. So my wife is a competitive tennis player. I play tennis with her. We are both pickleball players. And it's a shame that it's being looked upon as pickleball is going to take away from tennis, and tennis will take away the ability for pickleball. So that in itself creates a problem. Now you throw in the issue of, well, we have a tender here that's going to cost us double what we originally anticipated. How are we going to be able to just meet the initial criteria for tennis and accommodate pickleball? I wouldn't want to be sitting over there to make this decision, because it's a win-lose, win-lose, lose-lose-lose all the way around, unless we have to look at it from a different perspective. You know, Doug brought up a very interesting point. And yes, there are lots of people who play tennis on hard court, and hard court is not a negative for tennis. And by putting in a couple of courts for hard court doesn't take away from the tennis ability to play tennis. So there are probably positives to putting in hard court, the maintenance issue, etc., and the ability of what it allows you to be able to do, should you so decide that that's what you want to do. But I have to tell you, from my perspective, where I stand, it's a I don't want to say the words. It's a difficult.
Yes,
it's a real difficult situation. But before you could, instead of, I would hate to see you just say that because we don't have enough money, we're behind the 8 ball on this tender, we're going to just satisfy the initial request to upgrade our tennis courts. You really need to look at this at a long-term planning and in a short-term time zone. I mean, I know we're going to lose this summer, which is, it's sad. And by the way, you talked about the cost of tennis. You know, my wife is going to be playing in Côte Saint-Luc. You know how much she had to pay to play in Côte Saint-Luc? So, and there's lots of people, I think yeah, it was it's double what it cost her to play here as a resident of Hampstead.
It's $650.
Plus.
Right.
So
for a non-resident family membership, Côte Saint-Luc is $650.
It wasn't inexpensive, but that didn't stop her from playing tennis, as it wouldn't stop any of the real hardcore tennis players. So when you talk about the model, for the price model, what we should be charging and how much we can raise for, our fees to, I don't think, that's a barrier for entry. But again, getting back to this whole issue of what are we going to do today and how do we satisfy everybody? Well, we can't satisfy everybody. And I'm going to tell you, I live my life one way. It's called compromise. And compromise is that everybody walks away feeling that they got something and they gave up something. Because if it went one way, nobody's going to be happy. And we don't want to have resentment. And yes, there may be so many more tennis players than pickleball players in our community today, but come on, you see the writing, you see the demographics, you see what's going on. And we have to work, if we're going to build today, we have to build for tomorrow. And we have to look at what this community wants to look like tomorrow. And if it means incorporating pickleball wherever, however, it has to be part of this conversation. So for me, I was excited to hear that you said you're putting 3 pickleball courts outside this summer. And by the way, I wish there was a way that we could do something temporarily with a couple of tennis courts for the summer while you're making your decision, so we could have some sort of play on the tennis courts. I don't know that, but I'm just saying, it's unfortunate, but when you make, to just say, do we decide to go tennis, do we go forward with this tender, I don't think we're doing justice to what the real issue is on the table. No, that's basically what I have to say.
Hi, I'm Howard Dermody. I don't want to be redundant. I have a few questions to ask. I agree with everything that Lawrence just pointed out. There's no doubt that pickleball is a rage. It's a fait accompli, and the decision to defer it is really a non-decision. It's got to be done now in response to the demand, not just because of the people who are here, but it really is something that, I mean, in the 70s, I lived here for 20 years, and I was on the tennis courts all the time with my kids. As you get older, pickleball has become a more social sport. It's much more in demand, and people who are my age and younger are loving it. But I have a question to address to the tennis people. I don't play tennis, but I walk my dog a lot around the tennis courts, and it seems to me that when you say the tennis courts are in demand, are the tennis courts being used by other than Hampstead residents? And let me be specific. Are they being made available to other than Hampstead residents and using up valuable court time for people who are running businesses?
Councillor Fossey, you want to answer that?
I can answer that. Howard, we have pros. Greg Boer, and in the past was Guillermo, who is no longer with us. Greg is a draw to our tennis center. Now, it is true that the entire council is unanimous that we have to sit down and see how we can make arrangements so Greg can release some courts for the members. What you're referring to, that the pros are using the courts for many hours during the day. So that is something that has to be discussed internally. But if you're asking, are there non-resident who are members? Yes, but it's not big number.
No, but the reason I bring that up, Leon, is because in response to Richard's concern about giving up any of the tennis courts, when Doug says, figure out ways of using part of the tennis complex, because it's not all going for Hampstead residents. You're servicing the needs of other people whose rights are not as important as your Hampstead pickleball community. So if there is a way of reconciling the needs of both sides, it's unfair to be giving these people who are not Hampstead residents the right to use courts and to deny the pickleball players the right to use the two courts where Richard is sitting. Because if it's not just tennis players who are using the courts full time, I walk by and I say, these people are teaching, and they've got classes going there, and look, it's a business.
Okay, one at a time. Guys, we can't run a meeting like this.
Davin, 1 second.
I think 2 years ago, your point was well taken. There was like a clinic here. But in the last year, it wasn't like that. It's been the 2 or 3 teaching pros that are here to support the Hampstead kids and the community of Hampstead. And it's very ordered. Last year was it was a great year of tennis last year. And for me, the other thing is that you have to consider, it's so easy, it's such a practical, obvious situation, to your point. If you want to recover and recapture some dollars, just charge the membership more. We're so, and I think it'll also clear down usage of the court from the outside. So if I don't know what family membership you used to run, but let's say if it's
$400,
bang it up to $700, $650, whatever it may be, you're going to get that without objections. And then the other thing is, if you put in a hard court here, you have to be mindful that you're going to have to resurface those hard courts almost every year. Between the sun, the moving ground, go look at Hampton, go look at any hard court in Conseil. There's riddled with cracks and holes, and you will have that perpetually here. It's a monster mistake. From a tennis perspective, it's a monster mistake. Last but not least, you formed a tennis committee. And the tennis committee was completely blacked out of all this. That's why I'm a little bit empathy. I want you to have some empathy for some of the people that have been here, that have been along with this ride and these discussions of committees, and we spent hours on this. And then it was like we were just I'm here tonight, and you guys are making all the decisions, and you're clued out with tennis, like you don't understand tennis really, right? So shouldn't for me, that's the purpose of having a tennis committee.
So
Okay, so if I can interrupt both of your conversations, I'm not here to tell you that tennis should not be done in the proper way. It's a real problem. I mean, I see it every day, and you have a big challenge ahead of you. But I think to treat pickleball, which is now a new challenge, as a crossover, it should be dealt with in a parallel way. It's not a very costly exercise. I mean, I heard numbers. I mean, it's below the numbers that you need to get proper approval on.
Correct.
And to put 3 courts out there as a starting point and get a pickleball committee, so people make sure that when they get there, they're not frustrated, that there's 30 people waiting to get on a court. There are going to be rules. There are people who know how to set this up. And I think that this should all be done in a parallel way to dealing with the tennis issues.
So,
Part of my comment, and I think I speak for everyone who's attended here previous to this, is that we've gone through what you just said. We had a discussion about this, and we approved pickleball on the side of the tennis courts.
And we're happy with it being there.
I don't know. We went the
so
Richard, may I, Mr. Mayor, can I quickly? You know, I'm a little bit not comfortable because it bothers me that I see the tennis and the pickleball as if one is fighting the other. That's not the case.
We're one community.
It's exactly what I want to say. We're actually, there is absolutely a way for us to satisfy both without hurting the tennis courts, and we still have immediately, we're already now proceeding with having 3 pickleball courts very soon in here.
That's great.
At the arena right here, at the hockey area here. So we're addressing the situation. The other point it's important to really mention here, I don't think that you guys are stuck here to take 2 courts and make them hard court. If we had a problem of real estate, where we could not accommodate the pickleball anywhere in Hampstead, I understand the problem. But we have where we can put them. We can put them here, we can put them where the volleyball, we can put pickleball and many.
Frankly, Leon, I'm happy to hear this because I wasn't even aware before I walked in tonight. And I've had opportunity to speak to some of the people at the table. This is the first time I hear that the 3 courts are there, and I think it's a great idea. And if it comes up in the next few weeks, even better. And there should be a way of implementing it so that it's done in an orderly fashion, so that everybody enjoys it. And I want you guys to have your tennis too.
The last tennis committee meeting we had, we all agreed to this.
Great. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Howard.
I don't know what we're hammering this about. Everyone agreed pickleball should be there, but not the expensive tennis. And know for sure, if you build hard courts there, you're going to spend more money on the hard courts than you did on the court.
What is the time frame for getting 3 pickleballs completed?
So I think it's going to be a few weeks, right? So basically, we're going to put some asphalt down, paint it, and we're ready to go. So
It's a done deal.
Yeah. I just want to reiterate the fact, and I think everyone on council is supportive of this. We want to accommodate to pickleball, okay? We want to see pickleball in Hampstead. It will happen. The question is, how does it happen? Do we incorporate that into the tennis courts, or is it somewhere else? That's basically the crux of the pickleball issue with regards to tennis. It's not that I'm going back to this. Council is split on this.
Just for the process. Just for the process. It's for the process, because it's fair, we have to be.
I mean, the 3
Guys, please.
But he's here.
He's in the middle, he's in the middle.
The 3 courts is a done deal, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, is there an opportunity to take more real estate and make it into?
So these 3 courts are going to be temporary courts. That's not our long-term plan for it. It's in the middle of the basketball courts, and we really need to find a good permanent solution for pickleball. We don't want to take away green space. So that's why we're looking at the 2 parking lots. Let's, lose one of the parking lots and put pickleball there. That's one of the options. The other option was just incorporate it into 2 tennis courts.
Okay, well, from what I'm hearing from the tennis group, it doesn't seem to be the ideal solution. So what I'm thinking about is, what would be the time frame to establish a more permanent solution for pickleball beyond the 3 courts that are going to be put in temporarily?
On the assumption that pickleball courts will not be in the tennis courts, like let's say it was in a parking lot or something, if we are able to find a solution that would put the cost under $100,000, we can invite private bidders to come put up a tender, a bid for the project. That could happen relatively quickly, and it could happen very easily this summer. So it could happen in conjunction with the temporary solution.
So the temporary solution doesn't go into the 100K? That's...
No, no.
That's done.
It's far less than the 100K.
It's just putting some asphalt down and painting.
Lines. That's ready, it's ready.
So,
A more permanent solution is to have proper courts fenced up with whatever the material is and to have it done right. Permanent solution.
And how long will it take to look into this? Can we do this?
So what we're getting information on now, and we should have it in 48 hours, is are we legally allowed to request the lowest conforming bidder to change its bid to convert 2 tennis courts to 4 pickleball courts? Council wanted to have that information. Correct. Council wanted to have that information to help them make a decision on whether they want to accept that or reject that.
What was the point of the tennis committee? I'm gonna answer that. It's a valid question. Wait, one question at a time.
You can play pickleball on a clay court using a deep person on a tennis ball.
No, it's not, you can't.
No. Okay. Let me address.
On a television, video game.
All right.
Come on.
So shortly after we canceled the Moribel contract, we formed a tennis committee because we wanted to get input on how to best redevelop the tennis courts going forward. And we looked at many options. We looked at can we change the layout of the courts? Can we split the courts so we have a double-sided fence down the middle? And we looked at can we add some kind of outdoor structure, 2-level deck for a clubhouse or whatever it is that you want to call it. And then we received information from our lawyer that basically says if you're going to change this bid document significantly, you will not be able to have any recourse against Moribel down the road for whatever reason. It would be much more challenging if we changed the layout. Based on that information, we entered into negotiations with Moribel. The negotiations were very quiet. Like it wouldn't be prudent to publicly disclose your negotiations as the negotiations are going on. It would give the other party an unfair advantage. We had to negotiate to secure this material because otherwise there was it became I'm gonna get to your point. It became litigious. So I guess in the whole scheme of things, we were focused on getting the courts up and running. At that point, we weren't changing the layout of the courts. It didn't make a difference on how we would go forward on the tender. We tried to get a tender document up and running as quickly as possible. That was our goal. That was our mission, and we did that.
I don't understand the answer, but that's okay. It's cryptic to me. Your answer is cryptic. But listen, the only thing that I'm saying is that within the tent, if you want to be following this.
Richard, there are people waiting online.
He can wait in line. You can come and wait in line too, Rich. Come on. Well, what? Well, come on. I mean, literally, I don't know. It's not about me. I'm not. Look, I have to tell you. The only reason why I ever even got into a conversation about how do we incorporate pickleball in the tennis courts was because I thought that there was no other option to us, and the only way we were going to get any court space was by having an option with tennis. If you're telling me that there's a commitment on the city side to create a pickleball area, then there's no reason for this conversation. And I have to tell you, so, I mean, but that doesn't change the problem you have, and I have a comment about that. So let's put this to bed. Pickleball is a new phenomenon. And I have to tell you that I'm really, really, really happy to hear that you're really ready to do something, even if it's on an interim basis, but you know if you give it at the beginning, you can never take it away, right? But you're not going to want to. So I really think that we have to put aside this whole thing about thinking that pickleball wants to take from tennis and tennis has to give up her, no. Listen, I'm also a tennis player. My wife plays here competitively, takes the lessons with Greg. I mean, it's part of our life. I would hate to see tennis suffer having to give up some of its space. So I think that conversation should be over. We should start with the temporary courts and whatever we can get. Put a committee together, build on what it looks like this summer. What does the future look like? Let's look at the tennis issue that you have on hand. And I have to tell you something, the idea of sponsorship, I think is brilliant. Listen, I've been playing hockey my whole life, and you walk into any municipal hockey arena, you will see advertising all over. And I think it would be a wonderful way of us being able to bring and offset the cost of the tennis. So I think it's a great idea. So I think put this conversation to bed already about pickle against the tennis. You're giving pickleball an opportunity to start.
Well said. I have no argument with that whatsoever. The only thing I want to say, to be transparent, that you should all understand, because I don't want you to be dreaming in color. It's fine and well that you want to do and are going to do, and you've made a commitment to do these temporary 3 courts, which I trust that means that you're going to resurface.
Yes, a new skin is put on.
Councillor Budney
Good.
just sent an email to all of us and Richard.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. But only because you say it's an interim step and you're wanting to go ahead with a permanent solution, I want you to be aware that there is no way, I know with certainty because I've spoken to the builders, that 3 permanent pickleball courts with the necessary fencing, with the necessary landscaping, can be done for $100,000. Just be aware.
No.
Okay? No, why I'm saying that, you can get up here and speak. Why I'm saying that is because I don't want to find that we're back here after this temporary setup, and you say, well, we were ready to do permanent pickleball courts, but since it can't be put under that $100,000, which is a fraction of the 2.5, which will be $3 million when it's all said and done, because I'm also aware that you bought material that may not be able to be used, to be transparent. That's what I've understood.
That's not
Okay,
correct.
whatever. Let it be 2.7, I hope it's 2.5, I hope it's 2, and I hope they have wonderful tennis courts. But we pickleball players are only needing 10% of the space and dollars to have proper pickleball setup. So it can't be done for under the 100,000. So be aware, please, and I'd like your commitment that after we have these temporary courts, that just as you opened a tender, that you open a tender for proper pickleball courts with the proper landscaping that's going to be required, unless Hampstead's doing it on their own coin somehow, and the fencing and so on, because it cannot be done for that 100. I know for a fact, and I think Leon's well aware. We spoke to someone. So I hope I have your commitment that after the temporary shot, that just as you did for the tennis, that you'll go to tender. It'll still cost no more than 10% of what you're spending on tennis, nor take up more than 10% of space that you allocate, and will serve 4 to 8 times as many people in that space and at that cost.
Do you have it?
Hang on, I'm gonna address that, and I'm gonna address it in
I just want
the,
to get an idea of the numbers you're talking about.
Well,
You're saying not 100,000, but what are we talking about? You're saying 10%?
You go to the microphone,
Are we
Doug.
talking?
I'm saying that you should be looking at $250,000,
For how many?
10%
For how many
for
courts?
3 to 4 courts, which each court will serve 8 people, okay? And why 8 people? Because there's 4 that play, and pickleball being a social sport, after every game of 11, there's a rotation, and Leon saw it both in Montreal and in Florida, where I took him to see a few courts. So I just want to be transparent and don't fool ourselves. It's fine to do the repaving, we're grateful, but we'd like proper pickleball set up after, and not to be dreaming that it's going to be under $100,000. But if this is worth $2.5 million, so worth 10%.
let me ask you something.
Yeah.
When when we say $100,000, that's because this was an estimate that was provided to us. This was a break. Let me just finish.
Yeah.
Let me just finish.
That I provided.
But let's say you're right. But let's say you're wrong. Let's say it comes back at $400,000.
Yes.
Okay? What would you say
Yes.
to anybody on this council
Yes.
that accepted a blind financial commitment to do something, not knowing what the cost is?
No, I want a commitment, yes. I want a commitment that we will have permanent pickleball and that you'll put it out to tender.
We are going to try our...
And not to be saying that it's going to be under the 100,000. That's why you're going to be doing it. That's what you seem to have said.
The 100,000 is to avoid going to public tender.
Understood.
And maybe it could be done in multiple parts.
Okay.
Maybe it could be broken up. I just want to make something very clear.
We're not a poor cousin to this side of the room.
Of course not. And this is
We
what...
pay the
and
same taxes.
This is what I want to make very clear. To me, tennis and pickleball were always 2 separate, distinct issues.
Right.
Okay? And second, I would love to see more recreational facilities here.
Beautiful.
That's what I campaigned down.
Beautiful.
And that's what I believe.
Beautiful.
Okay? In order to make decisions, as we've seen in the past, we don't want to just rush and make decisions blindly. We need to know what we're dealing with. So, yes, we're going to have a temporary solution. We're going to put in temporary pickleball courts, and we will, once we have an idea of where in the park we can put pickleball courts. Absolutely. We're going to try our utmost to get it done financially responsible.
For a second? Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm supporting what you're saying.
Please.
And adding one more point. What's important, Doug, you should really, I understand that you want to push hard to make sure that we get it. And believe you me, everybody around the table got it very clearly and loud. It'll happen. You just have to be patient. We're doing immediately. Listen. Let me finish.
2023, I'm good.
Let me finish. I'm with you. I'm not against you. I'm with you. I'm in your camp. Let me finish. That's why we proceed. We agreed, this table, agreed to move immediately. We're going to put acrylic on that surface there to make it nice and straight.
I have to tell you, if you said you're going to put a fence around and it's our pickleball courts, I'm good.
Fine, but let me finish. So you're going to have 3 courts immediately, right? Right. So, and then we're going to go and we see, that buys us time to study, to learn, to get and understand what really are the needs.
Yes, and be open to going to tender and not be dreaming that it's going to be done for under 100,000. That's all I'm saying.
Maybe it could be done in separate components, like the fence you just mentioned. Maybe that could be added after the fact, which would help out with the financial costs.
Is that what you're going to do?
No. There's no way that we could build a tennis court under $100,000.
Always a fence around the pickleball? Yes. Because I played on 2 courts and there were no fences. Only wherever I have ever played, there was a fence.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we have a council meeting also? Do you have to go through a whole agenda as well?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so I'll make it really quick then.
Okay.
With respect to the tennis, I want to understand, and I think everyone, maybe it's not very clear, are your holding off to give the contract until such time as you have a commitment for sponsorship?
No.
Okay.
No.
So you're...
I'm confident we'll be able to fill that up.
Okay, so right now, are you still waiting to modify the contract or to reopen the contract to find about the two courts, the two asphalt courts, or are you guys ready to give a commitment in the next little while to start as the lowest bidder so you can be ready for end of July? Because I'm just speaking from the utmost experience, if you don't give that contract like demain, you could oublie ça pour le fin de juillet. So that's number thing, and I just want to know for the sponsorship, when are you going to have an idea of that? Because there's someone on council who's been pushing me so hard to sponsor, which I'm open to, but I want to know what you guys are looking at.
Okay, I don't have the answer on the...
So when you do have it, I guess it should be sent open to the whole community and let us know what you're looking for.
Absolutely, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you stepping forward.
5 million so you can sponsor everything.
So, like I said, in 48 hours, we're going to know if we're legally able to make a change or not. Council will make a decision on the information that's presented before them, and then we're going to make a decision, do we want to bite the bullet, accept this tender, move forward, or roll the dice and try to go for a lower cost for next season. It's one of the two. Yeah, or...
Look, I think even you, I think like everybody in the room is leaning towards, you know, I don't know if it's your decision alone or, you know, like I said, but everyone in the room is leaning towards
bite the bullet.
Tomorrow, press the button.
Right.
And I think that, you know, for me, the solution to failing sponsorships is increase the membership, or both.
Oh, that's what we're looking at. To both. That's what we're looking at, and that's why I see this is if we can recover this investment over a 10-year period. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not a tennis guy. I played tennis when I was a kid. Separate. When I look at it, I'm looking at big picture, holistic, what it is it takes to run this town, and allocation of resources. My job is to make sure that we've got enough money for our primary things, which is basically our staff, our roads, our sidewalks, our sewers. That's my primary concern. After that, I'm saying, okay, everything else, we still need to be able to do, but it becomes a secondary concern. And then I'm looking at the tennis. I'm looking at it, and we're like, 800,000. Okay, 800,000 becomes $1.3 million. Then $1.3 million becomes 2.25. And I'm thinking, okay, is this a reasonable allocation of resources? I've got, at best, my highest peak, about 7.5% of my population is playing tennis. Is it a fair allocation of resources to essentially, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, we've got two separate funds. We've got my general fund, and we've got my park fund. My park fund is what comes from demolitions and from subdividing lots, generally from demolitions.
It's your screw up.
My screw up?
You have to fix it.
No, so
That's what it is. And you're going back
so we're in a situation where we have to fix the fact that there's a giant hole in the ground. Now the question is, how do I fix it? Do I just say, hey, you know what, we're going to just bite the bullet and throw money at this, and then, hey, you know what, and I gotta throw another $250,000 at that? That's fine. It makes everybody happy. I'm gonna spend $2.2 million on this 7%, and I'm gonna spend another, $250,000 on this 1 or 2% of the population. But at the end of the day, there are, one of the people who got up said this, we've got limited resources, and if everybody in this room, and if the people in the town in general, are fine with spending, I run the numbers really tight, and your tax rate increases for the last 12 years have been very low from our point of view, not from the Montreal point of view, from our point of view. So you never got a tax rate increases above 1.5%. If you're and the town tells me, hey, you know what, we want and we want and we want, no problem, we can give and give and give, but it's got to come from somewhere. So I need to have more revenue or cut expenses somewhere, and I've got increased.
Please let him finish.
So I'm talking about the reality. So yeah, everybody wants, and that's not a problem, and I understand that, but from our point of view, we have to say, what is a fair and reasonable allocation of resources across the town? And I'm happy that you guys came out, but at the end of the day, tennis represents 7.5% of the population. We've got to screw up, we've got a hole in the ground, and I'm thinking, how's the best way to move forward given the existing situation? If I've got a hole in the ground and it's going to cost me money to fix it, am I looking at higher costs because I gave them a very short window, or could I get lower costs with going with a longer window and incorporate the extra $250,000 from pickleball into the current facility, so I wind up with a compromise? You've got less courts, but I'm covering more people, I'm giving more benefit and resources to people with the same amount of money or less money. And so that's the way I see it. That's the way I understand it.
One second, but can I reply to this?
Are you finished, Councilor?
Sure.
Wait, Leon, yeah.
No, so I think also another thing is that we need, we're talking about offsetting the costs, and I love the idea of the $1 million through sponsorship. And at the beginning of this mandate, we were kind of discussing it, and I think there's a new model that we should be looking at, and the thing that we called it was the 20 million club. Personally, what I'd like to see is we have a certain resource, and we have in this town, we have a certain number of people who have the ability to donate money, and we have a certain other number of people who are not necessarily wealthy. There's a disparity in the town, and that's a given, that's a norm. Now, I can either say, hey, you know what, I'm going to tax everybody based on their property values and bring in more money, but then the kind of socialist in me is saying, okay, well, then I'm hurting the guys who don't have a lot of money. But what I'm looking at from the tennis, I'm saying, hey, you know what, if I can get a situation where I can get sponsorship, and not just for the tennis, but for the bigger picture of community resources and maybe a real facility in the building that we're standing in, instead of having this facility, we knock it down and build a real facility. And we say, let's go back to the community, let's go back to the people who have the ability and say, look, we're looking for some real commitments. I'm not looking to up my tax rate by 5 to 7% because it's going to hurt a lot of people. And I'd like to have real commitments from people to be able to say, we're going to back some real investment into this community. And just one other thing with regards to the offsetting of the tennis costs with higher membership, it might not hurt you. But when I went door to door before the elections, not everybody price is not that elastic with everybody. There's certain people who it would hurt. And I'd rather see us running a municipal court rather than an exclusive type situation. And I'd rather see lower prices and more access to our residents than to have, higher prices and say, hey, well, I'm able to offset the price over 10 years, but what am I doing essentially? I'm making it into an exclusive court. And this is not exclusive, this is a municipality. If somebody wants to have exclusive, then there are private places to go. This is a municipality where we have to take care of everybody from A to Z, the not so wealthy and the wealthy. And to say, I'm gonna bump it up to $1,000, I don't care, it's I've got the money for it, is unfair to the other half of my population that just doesn't have that money. So that's my point of view.
Thank you.
Richard,
Councilor Pass, you wanted to say something?
You wanted to say something, Richard?
No. I don't need to say anything.
Okay, look, I didn't want to turn this to...
This gentleman.
Oh, I'm sorry.
For a long time.
Go ahead.
Yes. Let him speak.
No, Leon, you had a comment. Finish.
Go ahead.
I want to switch gears. I want to talk about infrastructure.
Okay.
So, if you want to finish with tennis, you can finish.
This is a municipal council meeting, and I haven't heard one thing about you guys being able to get money from the federal or provincial government. Westmount got a ton of money for their arena and pool. You know, did you give a person to look into that? I'm sure there's money allotted, but you know.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We looked at that. But beyond doing the tennis courts, we as council want to explore the idea of significantly upgrading this community center.
Exactly.
We're talking about like an $8 to $10 million project. That's going to be a multiple year project. We do not want to jeopardize getting federal and provincial grant money on an $8 to $10 million project just so that we could get a lower amount on a $2 million tennis court project.
Go ahead, sir.
Good?
Yeah.
Ryan Vopshas, 19 Allerdale. I was here in February for a meeting. First off, thank you guys for your reactivity on the issue. At 10 a.m. the next morning, crews are out there paving the potholes, so thank you guys. We discussed two things last meeting. One was discussions with the City of Montreal about what to do with the aqueducts underneath the road before we can actually repave. And then second was a temporary solution that you mentioned. We should do like a thin grade on the road, about 10 millimeters, I think you said, or 10 centimeters, and then do just a top coat, the top coat. So wanted to get an update on where we are with that.
Okay, so we have been trying to obtain copies. Let me take a step back. We want to get an engineer to give us a status report on the water main, so that we can know with certainty whether we can repair it or not. We're going on the basis that it's in terrible shape, and whatever we do, it's going to fall apart. I haven't seen anything concrete to that, so I've requested from the administration to present to me a report, whether it's yes, it's fragile, or no, you could do something. We've been speaking with an engineer. Part of the scope limitation that the engineer is presented with is he does not have actual plans from the City of Montreal. We have Hampstead's plans, and the City of Montreal has their plans. And Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, but they have not been so forthcoming with providing us the plans.
That is correct. We have, short of doing an access to information request, I have a meeting set up in a few weeks' time with their Director General, Serge Lamontagne. We're drafting a letter with the help of the public relations firm, okay, because they want to have access to their plans, to their architectural drawings and so on, so that our engineer may empirically determine, you know, what kind of risk factor we have when we start taking and stretching up the surface and so on. The vibration will not cause a catastrophic water break on the 36-inch high pressure water pipe. Okay, so that's where we are at.
So as soon as we get that information from the City of Montreal, we're going to continue with the engineering report and have more information for us to make a proper decision. We need to have good data.
Yeah.
So hopefully we're just a few weeks away from getting the plans from the City of Montreal, and hopefully they'll cooperate with us.
Okay. So Richard, I'll circle back with you in a couple of weeks.
Yes, certainly.
Perfect.
I'll give you my contact.
Perfect, thank you.
Can I just stay on that point? With that being said, asphalt was in short supply in the early months. It is now in stock, in supply. So the crews in Public Works, and Councilor Foss can talk about it, but they have been going around in the meantime, temporarily. Allerdale, we know, is the biggest problem right now. And that's what they're going to focus on in the meantime until we get a more concrete plan. I can just tell you personally, and the mayor and Richard's son are aware of this, that lamp standard that's been sitting on the sidewalk for a year and a half took no less than about 15 emails and phone calls to the actual new mayoress of NDG Côte-des-Neiges, the councillors there, whatever it is, and when it was done, they even said, oh, but why are we doing it? It was repaired last year and fixed last year. So they had no, like left hand, right hand, they had no idea what the situation was. So we are constantly on their case, and the same thing with the Ellerdale status of the aqueduct. All right?
Please.
Good evening. So it's Carl Hamilton, and I live on Côte St. Luc Road near Ellerdale, but I live on the Montreal side of Côte St. Luc Road. For the last 2 to 4 years, I've attended some of the Hampstead Town Council meetings, mostly interested in the November 2019 referendum and the Côte St. Luc Road redevelopment proposals. I have 1 or 2 questions.
Can't really hear him.
Question number 1. The new council has been in place for about 6 months now. Between the once-a-month public meetings, I believe the council occasionally caucuses. I would think that there's been some talk there about the 20 or so apartment buildings along Hampstead's portion of Côte St. Luc Road. Given the redevelopment discussions of the 2017 to 2021 council, what are the council's current thoughts, opinions, feelings regarding the status of these structures and the people living there? Redevelopment, leave as is, or something else?
Thank you for the question. I'll address it, and then if any other councillor wants to give their perspective. I think the discussion around Côte St. Luc Road and the redevelopment has become, it was in the past mandate, such a toxic discussion that it's basically radioactive. Whenever something is brought up about it, everyone has a poor taste in their mouth because of the way things were done. In the past, since the beginning of this mandate, we haven't really had any discussions on Côte St. Luc Road, other than, down the road, is there something to be done? But nothing very, very high level, nothing concrete, no serious discussions, absolutely nothing significant. Nothing has been, no developer has presented plans to do something. So right now, it's status quo. Nothing has been discussed, nothing is decided. Anybody on council want to? Yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, so I have a second question. I'm thinking that the 6, 8, 10-story redevelopment plan for Côte St. Luc Road is sort of off the table for the time being. But my concern is that some landlords/developers may now go the rent-eviction route, as has taken place at 5785 Côte St. Luc Road and 1 Glenmore. Tenants are evicted, the buildings get renovated, and the result is high-end, more expensive units. Rents have risen dramatically over the last few years, and I think Montreal and Hampstead should do all they can to preserve reasonable rents in the midst of what some are calling a housing affordability crisis. According to one Montreal City Councillor, Projet Montréal is currently working on a, quote, very strict anti-renovation regulation, unquote. Will Hampstead's Town Council consider such a measure as well? And what are its plans to maintain affordable rents? And I just want to add one other thing, and from some personal observations, and I may be completely wrong, there seems to be a slow roll eviction taking place at possibly 1 or 2 Côte St. Luc Road apartment buildings.
Okay.
I don't really think it's council's position.
Well, not on the, you mean on the last sentence I said, or?
I mean, that's between the landlord, the tenant, and the Régie de Logement.
Right. But the question is,
I would think it'd be more important. People live in their homes, they don't
So
live on that
I'll say this, I've said it before with regards to affordable housing. There's no doubt about it. It's a nationwide issue. It's not just an issue related to Montreal. But it's also not an issue that can be handled at the municipal level. The federal and provincial government need to step up and properly address it. You referenced the City of Montreal. The City of Montreal has much larger resources than a small town like us to be able to deal with it. There's two sides to this. Absolutely, nobody wants to see a tenant get evicted. But at the same time, a landlord, a developer, has certain rights that are given to them by the provincial law. We, as a municipal government, can never override provincial law. It's a sticky situation, but there are limited things that we can do. With regards to the anti-renovation recommendation, I don't know if that's in the best interest, because what you will see is you will see just regularly maintained units start to fall apart. So how strict do you make an anti-renovation bylaw? I think this is, and I've said it before, it's part of a much broader program that has to be handled at all three levels, and not just the municipal level.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a very trite question, relative to everything else that's being presented tonight. Recycling. The notice that came out that's saying you must put everything in your blue boxes or else. You almost have a feeling that there's the recycling police. My partner in crime, Mr. Mayoff, he and I go around with our recycling extras, our cardboard boxes, and we look for these big buckets that are construction outside of homes to find a place to put them. Honestly, my bags that get accumulated, I got 3 or 4 of them after they come around. Is there really, they don't take anything other than what's in the blue box, and the rest, we're just supposed to dump somewhere else?
So thanks for the question. Here's my perspective on this. One, I think there's a bit of a learning curve with this new contractor. Okay, we just changed
I know.
Recycling companies, and I think there's going to be a learning curve between residents and the new contractor, and there's already starting to be some improvements. But I also think that there is going to be more recycling going forward. I mean, let's call it the way it is. Everybody orders off Amazon right now. Now you eat these boxes. So, I'd like to look at the idea of maybe we can do something separate for recycled boxes. Maybe, we could have somebody come around at no cost to the town, collect all of these recycled boxes, and they could use it or resell it or whatever they can. I mean, this is something that...
But it is a problem because...
Absolutely.
The blue bags. We could have 4 blue bags in a week. They're only going to take 2 because only 2 fit in the blue box. We're not talking, I read Amazon.
I know, and there's going to be more and more of it, for sure.
But it's the bags. So if we fill our box, our blue box, and we have 2 bags, forget the boxes, forget that, and we cut our boxes up, will they want to take the 2 blue bags beside the box? They won't take it.
What is the contract?
Sorry, pardon me. The mayor asked me a question, so I'll respond to him and everybody else. Sure. The question was, do they take the blue bags and do they take the boxes, I presume? Okay, the previous contractor in the contract has always been the boxes has to go into the blue bin. If it is not in the blue bin, they would not take it. The last contractor, for some reason, has been always carting them away, which is good, but it created some kind of a habit with our residents. Sometimes they say, I'll leave it on the side and pick it up. We don't have a blue bag system for the recycling. We do have a yellow bag system for the garbage. Maybe we should look into that. Maybe we could arrange something with the current contractor that they will pick up anything that is in the blue bag. And because it's a recycling and it's good for the town and for the environment, and also we do get what they call the red bounce, which is a credit from the government. Maybe we don't have to charge for it. I'm just speaking on the term here, but I'm sure the mayor is of the same train of thought. We look into it and I'll report back to the mayor to let you know.
Any other questions? Okay, before we begin, I just want to acknowledge... Before we begin with town business, we haven't even got to town business yet. I want to acknowledge Commander Montour from Station 9. Thank you very much for attending tonight's meeting. I want to express sincerely on behalf of the entire community, the entire town, how well we appreciate what you and your team does and do for us every single day. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I also want to take this time to congratulate our incredible Director of many things, Director of IT, Director of Public Security, amongst other things, Mr. Thierry Houle, wears many hats for our community, and he has become an invaluable resource for us. So Thierry recently won a very prestigious award. I forget the name of the
Peter Bennett Award.
Okay.
If I may add.
Please.
It is an award that is given by two associations. One is called MISA, which is Municipal Information Participants Association, which is across Canada. The other one, jointly with MISA, is RAMQ, which is Ressources Informatique Municipaux du Québec. Okay? And for this award is simply because they want to acknowledge our director, Thierry Houle-Gingras, for his 18 years contribution to the development and promotion of municipal information system advancement. Okay, so I would like to...
So on behalf of the entire town of Hampstead, we congratulate you with this award. Okay, now we can begin. Before we begin, are there any changes?
Yep, yes, Mr. Mayor, there is a resolution I want to add.
Okay.
It is item 6.4, excuse me. It's a resolution for authorization to sign a lease for a parcel of land. Thank you. So I move it. That we
Okay, can I
add
have
it.
someone to second that? Schaefer. Seconded by Councillor Schaefer. Thank you. It's been added.
Thank you.
So, item 4.0, adoption of the minutes of the public consultation meeting and of...
So I want to just say a couple of points, because we lost so many people already at this
Okay,
point.
sorry.
And there's a couple of announcements I do want to make before we lose the remainder of people. Thank you. These are my diehards. Announcement of public security. Very important, and we talked about pickleball, we talked about tennis, but what I want to talk about is children's safety. Spring has arrived, and more young children and adults are out and about walking. Please pay extra attention when driving through the streets. Speeding is increased, stop sign, I know that Commander Montour is here. Commander Montour has dedicated additional staff to the town of Hampstead, bike patrol, foot patrol, and vehicle patrol, specializing in circulation. So I appreciate and acknowledge their presence, and I want to thank Commander Montour for that. The residents, it is duly needed, and he saw the need, and I want to thank him and his team for being there. For the parents of teenagers and young adults, please remind your children that it is important, because we see it constantly, texting while driving, speeding through stop signs at all times of the day and evening. So it's very important. We are looking at some short-term plans to curb the speeding with a campaign, publicity campaign, signage that you would see in some other cities, warning drivers to slow down, changes to some of the lights and vision of the lights, so the cars don't speed up to go through a stop sign to make the green light at the next block, which we've seen. So please, that's very important, as people are now out and about. It seems that COVID is over according to everyone, and everyone's out and about and doing things, so please pay attention to the kids on the bike, the dogs that are being walked and the children crossing the street, and especially around the parks. Parks, it's a limit of 30 kilometers, and there are so many kids crossing the streets, so please be careful. Community announcements, this Thursday, May 5th, very important, the Yom Ha'atzmaut celebration, the 74th annual celebration. It's at Cabot Square at Atwater and St. Catherine. I'm hoping the turnout's great. The weather's supposed to be nice, so please come out and support the celebration. On the note of Hampstead, public security is fully aware that individuals will be coming back from the rally wearing flags or holding flags and whatnot and stuff, and public security will be circulating in our streets, ensuring everyone's safety and coming back from the rally, and displaying Israel flags and whatnot. Lastly, as people know, I am the chair of Dawson. We've been fighting Bill 96, and we will keep on fighting this. I'm very pleased that we're passing a resolution tonight as a city denouncing the whole Bill 96, as other cities have done. Well, say we will be passing if everyone agrees. I also want to state that there is a rally being organized on May 14th. It is a Saturday. Unfortunately, we can't do anything about that. Starting at Dawson's and then proceeding to Premier Legault's office on Sherbrooke Street, protesting the Bill 96. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Goldrax. Are there any other announcements or anything that other councillors would like to say? Okay. So we're going to move to the adoption of the amended agenda. It is proposed by Councillor Schaefer, seconded by Councillor Goldrax, that the modified agenda of the regular council meeting is hereby adopted as presented. 4.0. Adoption of the minutes of the public consultation meeting and of the regular council meeting held on April 4th, 2022, as well as that of the special council meeting held on April 25th, 2022. It is proposed by Councillor Schaefer, seconded by Councillor Goldrax. And resolved that the minutes of the public consultation meeting and of the regular council meeting held on April 4th, 2022, as well as that of the special council meeting held on April 25th, 2022, are hereby approved as submitted. 5.1. Deposit of the minutes of the regular PAC meeting held on April 11th, 2022. Each member of the council having received a copy, the deputy town clerk deposits the minutes of the regular planning advisory committee meeting held on April 11th, 2022. The council takes notes of the deposit of the said minutes by the deputy town clerk. 5.2. Request to authorize the construction of a new detached single-family dwelling located at 27 Applewood Crescent, lot number 6512415, zone RA2, zoning bylaw number 1001 and SPIP bylaw number 775. It was proposed by Councillor Budning, seconded by Councillor Schaefer, and resolved that the request to authorize the construction of a new detached single-family dwelling located at 27 Applewood Crescent and submitted to the Planning Advisory Committee on April 11, 2022 is conditionally approved as recommended by the PAC, provided that the proposal is to slightly increase the 27 Applewood Crescent land size to accommodate this proposed construction and at the same time to reduce the 29 Applewood Crescent land size. The two adjacent properties will have to respect all zoning requirements. The 29 Applewood Crescent house do not need to be demolished under the present proposal. The subdivision project is still needed with the city approval to change lots 6512415 and 6512416 sizes. The proportions and volumes of the new design and the facades are acceptable. In consideration with the adjacent houses, the PAC do recommend the use of red bricks with stone insertions instead of stone masonry for better integration with neighbors. The project is acceptable under those conditions. The proposed project meets the prescribed standards of zoning bylaw number 1001 and only partially meets the prescribed standards of the site planning and architectural integration program bylaw number 775. Anyone opposed?
No.
Adopted. 5.3. Request to authorize an addition of the left side yard for a detached single-family dwelling located at 1 Applewood, lot number 2089696, zone RA2. Zoning bylaw number 1001 and SPIP bylaw number 775. It is proposed by Councillor Budning, seconded by Councillor Schaefer, and resolved that the request to authorize an addition on the left side yard for a detached single-family dwelling located at 1 Applewood and submitted to the Planning Advisory Committee meeting on April 11, 2022 is deferred as recommended by the...
We're going to be approving it.
We're approving it.
Mr. Chin? With condition. Approved with conditions.
Okay. Do we know what the conditions are?
Was the shape of the addition must be a little bit different than the existing house, so they did that.
They did it in the revised plans. So approved on condition that the proposed new shape is slightly different than the existing building to be approved by the planning department.
Okay. Anyone opposed? Adopted. 5.4. Request to authorize an addition on the rear yard for a detached single-family dwelling located at 25 Stratford, lot number 2088716, zone RA1, zoning bylaw number 1001, and SPIP bylaw number 775. It is proposed by Councillor Budning, seconded by Councillor Schaefer, and resolved that the request to authorize an addition on the rear yard for a detached single-family dwelling located at 25 Stratford and submitted to the Planning Advisory Committee meeting on April 11, 2022 is approved as recommended by the PAC. The proposed project meets the prescribed standards of the zoning bylaw number 1001 and meets the prescribed standards of the site planning and architectural integration program bylaw number 775. Anyone opposed? Adopted. 5.5. Request to authorize facades modification for a detached single-family dwelling located at 350 Dufferin, lot number 2088586, zone RB6, zoning bylaw number 1001, and SPIP bylaw number 775. It was proposed by Councillor Goldwax, seconded by Councillor Budning. Resolved that the request to authorize facade modifications for a detached single-family dwelling located at 350 Dufferin and submitted to the Planning Advisory Committee meeting on April 11, 2022 is conditionally approved as recommended by the PAC, provided that the roof of the proposed dormer on the front facade should be changed for a more traditional dormer design. The proposed project meets the prescribed standards of the zoning bylaw number 1001 and only partially meets the prescribed standards of the site planning and architectural integration program bylaw number 775. Anyone opposed? Adopted. 6.1. Appointment of a municipal representative to lead the drafting of a joint request for funding from several cities to the Government of Canada's 2 Billion Trees program. Whereas in the 2020 Fall Economic Statement, the federal government announced up to $3.2 billion over 10 years, starting in 2021-2022 to meet its commitment to plant 2 billion trees. The pledge is part of a comprehensive approach to natural climate solutions led by the Minister of Natural Resources with support from the Minister of Environment and Climate Change and the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food. Whereas the 2B2 program provides funding to support tree planting projects but does not provide trees or seedlings directly to the applicants. It is the applicant's responsibility. Whereas the 2BT program will establish a rolling application intake process with multiple review processes per year starting in 2022. There is no fixed timeline yet for calls for proposals. Whereas the 2BT program supports tree planting activities beyond those legally required activities, focusing on new tree planting projects and additions to existing projects that would not otherwise have occurred. Whereas the application may include tree planting in rural or urban areas on public lands with indigenous partners or private landowners or any combination thereof, whereas joint applications for multiple applicants may be submitted. Whereas funding agreements will only be signed with one entity as principal recipient. This is why joint applications will specify the person who will be the main partner. Whereas the tree planting project will support 3 project streams: the mass planting stream, the urban-suburban stream, and a limited small project stream. Whereas proposed projects must meet the minimum planting requirements of their respective stream. Funding for mass planting over 500,000 trees per year. Funding for small-scale planting over 50,000 trees per year. Funding for urban suburban planting over 10,000 trees per year. It is proposed by Councillor Alfasi, seconded by Councillor Goldwax, and resolved to designate Mr. Andrew Duffield, Director of Sustainable Development for the City of Beaconsfield, as municipal representative to lead the drafting of a joint funding request from several cities to the 2 Billion Trees program. Anyone opposed? Adopted. 6.2. Okay, so 6.2 is a resolution affirming our opposition to Bill 96.
Yeah.
There are 2 significant things that I just want to highlight. One, Bill 96 will drastically, in its current form, will drastically change the way municipalities can operate on a day-to-day basis. In addition, it's being proposed that if municipalities that have bilingual status are not in conformity with the French language laws in Quebec, that the Quebec government would then have the right and authority to withhold any grant or funding money from any program that's given by the provincial government. Additionally, federal funds are allocated by the provincial government, so this could have a direct impact there as well. The second thing that we want to mention is that with regards to the French requirement in CEGEPs, and Councillor Goldwax is the chair of Dawson College. So maybe you're best suited just to give your input on that particular aspect.
So basically, Bill 96, in their original form, was asking students to take 3 core courses in French, which, of course, most of the CEGEPs, all of them actually, stated it's going to have a detrimental effect on their R score. That is a rating score that the children are graded on and henceforth admitted into university. If they look at 2 students who have the same background in courses and everything else, and their high school marks, and their R score in CEGEP is lower, even by a point, they are denied entry. So the R-score, with having these core courses, more so in the sciences, or the health sciences, would have had an effect on their R-scores. They are now amended the Bill 96 with some changes stating that they can take, they still take three courses in French, but it could be at a discretion of the student of which course they could take, which will make it a little easier for them. But as a whole, this whole Bill 96, not just with the students, with visiting dignitaries who are here for 2 or 3 years coming from another country, they'll be limited, or 5 years on a government contract, will be limited with their schooling for their children. So there's a lot of effects of this Bill 96. It's the rights of the Anglos, and I do not believe, I don't agree to a two-tier healthcare system, and I don't agree to a two-tier educational system. So trying to push for equality for everyone.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Goldwax. Yeah, go ahead.
So we got an update from constitutional lawyers on this, and beyond just the dealings with Anglophones, this is actually a major structural change to the legal system of Quebec. So people shouldn't, and the average Quebecer should not be thinking of it just as something that's happening to the minority Anglophone community. This is something that's a structural change to the process that's going to potentially affect every single Quebecer, because currently it's only limited to the Office de la langue française, but the Office de la langue française, if I give that right to the Office de la langue française as a government, I can give that right to the Ministère des Revenus, to the Ministère, any ministry, and the fundamental changes is that it subsumes the courts below the law. Essentially what it does is it, for the second time in the history of Quebec, builds into the law itself the notwithstanding clause. So not only is it notwithstanding the federal charter, but it's also notwithstanding Quebec's own charter of rights and freedoms. So there's no recourse to say, as it was typically done, there's the law, I contest it, I go to court, the court argues against it, and then the government enacts the notwithstanding clause. This is basically saying, I'm invoking it straight off, so you don't have the right to go to court and to contest it. And another fundamental thing, which isn't just a question that affects like Anglophones, but affects all Quebecers, is the question of access to information. The government under this law has the right to request any document of any nature that the municipality is holding. So previous to this, if the government wanted to have access to all of our documents, they would have to go, they would have to search a court order, and they would have to convince a judge to be able to give them the permission to do it, and they would have to pass a certain bar in order to be able to do that. Now, under this current legislation, it becomes a thing that doesn't require you to go to the court. You can then just say, hey, you know what, I want to have access to this information, and you have to supply all that information. And if you don't supply that information, then, hey, you know what, you're not in conformity, and I can cut off your funding. Not only your provincial funding, but your federal funding. And today, it's the Office de la langue française that has these unprecedented rights, but if I allow this, and if the majority of the community allows this to happen, and I'm not talking Anglophone, I'm talking about the entire Quebec community, allows this to happen, then essentially you've set a precedent for allowing this to happen in any other ministry, and if it can happen in any other ministry, then all of our rights, all Quebecers' rights, are going to be fundamentally affected going forward. And that is a very dangerous proposition.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
So this is a very lengthy resolution. I'm not going to read it in entirety. You got the short version of it. So we'll move right to adoption. It is proposed by Councillor Schaefer, seconded by Councillor Goldwax, and resolved that the Council calls on the Government of Quebec to remove Bill 96 from the order paper and meaningfully consult with the English-speaking community of Quebec and associations such as the QCGN that represent the community before putting forward any legislation that would serve to amend the charter of the French language. The Council further expressed its view that many of the amendments contained in Bill 96 and further amendments at the National Assembly Committee on Culture and Education are in clear contravention of the spirit of fairness and open-mindedness and are not respectful of the English-speaking community of Quebec as per the preamble and spirit of the existing charter of the French language. That the Council calls on the Government of Quebec to consult with the Barreau du Québec and constitutional experts prior to bringing forward new legislation in order to ensure that rights granted residents of Quebec under the Quebec Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and the Canadian Constitution are not obliged by any modifications to the charter of the French language. The town of Hampstead calls on the government of Quebec to commit to not preemptively use the notwithstanding clause in this legislation to commit that the charter of French language remains subject to the Quebec Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms. The town of Hampstead will vigorously oppose modifications of the charter of the French language, including but not limited to those which create extra bureaucracy, cost, and paperwork for multiple levels of the Quebec government, municipal bodies, and private companies. Further discouraging English speakers, Quebecers to apply for the Work Quebec civil service. Reduce the ability of residents and city employees to get access to services in the language of their choice. Impose draconian penalties, including cutting all provincial funding if municipalities serve residents in the language of their choice, or allow workers to communicate amongst themselves in a language other than French. Further reduce the ability of our residents and the residents of Quebec to receive an education in English that could affect their future professions and livelihood. Further reduce the rights of bilingual institutions such as cities to operate in English as well as French. The town of Hampstead transmit a copy of this resolution to all the members of the National Assembly of Quebec, including the member of National Assembly for Darcy McGee, to all other municipalities in the Montreal metropolitan community, to the member of Parliament for Mount Royal, to the Federal Minister of Official Languages, to the Commissioner of Official Languages of Canada, to the Union des Municipalités du Québec, to the Fédération Québécoise des Municipalités, and to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Anyone opposed? No. Adopted. 6.3, resolution to appoint a third deputy town clerk to replace the town clerk during absences. Whereas the town of Hampstead is under the jurisdiction of the Cities and Towns Act, Chapter C-19. Whereas the Cities and Towns Act under Section 2, Clerk Article 85 to 96 stipulates that a clerk is required to attend at all sittings of the council and to draw up minutes of all the facts and proceedings thereof. Whereas Article 96 of the Cities and Towns Act specifies that the council may appoint a deputy town clerk to perform the duties of the office of the town clerk in the case of an absence or in the case of incapacity. Whereas it is in the interest of the town of Hampstead to appoint a third deputy town clerk to ensure the continuity of the office during any absences. It is proposed by Councillor Schaefer, seconded by Councillor Goldwax, and resolved that Mr. Yves Prosper Wabotedom is appointed third deputy town clerk in addition to the deputy town clerks when they are absent or otherwise unable to perform their duties.
Question, who's the second?
Simona?
Well, no, Brenda's your first, I think you're first.
Yes,
Simona is the first. Oh, Simona's first? Okay. Thank you.
All right.
I thought you were first.
7.1.
6.4.
Oh, sorry, 6.4. Okay. Authorization to sign a lease for a parcel of land. Whereas it, whereas the town of Hampstead has agreed to lease to Mr. David Gobert a parcel of land in a part of lots 2384919 Chemin Cressy, Cadastre du Québec, Registration Division of Montreal, comprising of approximately 76.2 square meters, shown outlined in red on the plan attached here to Schedule A. Whereas the leased parcel is part of the landlord private domain not being used for public purposes. It was proposed by Councillor Schaefer, second by Councillor Goldwax, and resolved to authorize the Director of Urban Planning and Building Inspection to sign on behalf of and for the town of Hampstead a lease with Mr. David Gobert for the leased parcel of land in accordance with the conditions described in this lease agreement. Anyone opposed? Adopted.
So, just.
Hi, Derek.
Can you give clarification on the lease, that there would be yearly amount that you would be paying?
That's correct. So, okay, so this is a situation where a homeowner has a very odd shaped, or has an unusual shaped lot. Irregular, thank you. And wants to put a fence around his property for his pool. Now, the city property encroaches, I shouldn't say encroaches, the city property is much wider on one side of his property than on the other, and it would seem unfair if he's not able to maximize his land use. Unfortunately, since it's city property, he can't just put a fence on it. This resolution allows the town to enter into a lease agreement with Mr. Gobert so that the town will lease him the right to use the town property so he can put a fence on it. It's going to be an annual commitment, and it's basically, the lease amount is 1% of the prorated municipal land value over what the city property is. Okay? Good?
Thank you.
7.2.
1.
Sorry, 7.1. Adoption of bylaw number 1004-3 entitled Bylaw Amending Bylaw 1004 concerning the permits and certificates. Whereas the members of council have received a copy of bylaw number 1004-3 entitled Bylaw Modifying Bylaw 1004 concerning the permits and certificates and declare to have read it. So is this on the land transfer? Is this the land transfer one? Okay, so we are harmonizing our land transfer tax rates with the City of Montreal. The City of Montreal increased the land transfer tax rates. Just for certain, certainty and clarity, this does not change annual property taxes. Land transfer is when somebody buys a property, you have a one-time land transfer tax that you pay to the municipality. The rates went up a little bit, or significant, depending on how expensive the property is. It's estimated, if these rates were in effect last year, it would have brought in an additional $280,000 in additional tax revenues. So it's estimated on a going forward basis, we're gonna be yielding at least $300,000 plus every year going forward. It is proposed by Councillor Edery, second by Councillor Schaefer, and resolved to approve bylaw number 1004-3 entitled bylaw modifying bylaw 1004 concerning the permits and certificates. Anyone opposed?
No.
Adopted. Adoption of bylaw number 1010-17 entitled bylaw modifying tariffs bylaw number 1010. Whereas the members of council have received a copy of bylaw number 1010-17 entitled bylaw modifying tariffs bylaw number 1010 and declared to have read it. It is proposed by Councillor O'Fassi, seconded by Councillor Goldwax, and resolved to approve bylaw number 1010-17 entitled bylaw modifying tariffs and bylaw number 1010. Anyone opposed? Adopted. 7.4. Notice of motion of draft bylaw number 1028-1 entitled bylaw modifying bylaw number 1028 decreeing and imposing duties on transfers of immovables. Notice of motion was given by Councillor Schaefer. The draft bylaw number 1028-1 entitled bylaw modifying bylaw number 1028 decreeing and imposing duties on transfers of immovables will be submitted to council for adoption. All council members have received a copy of draft bylaw number 1028-1 and a motion to dispense with the reading of the said draft bylaw was made. 7.5. Deposit of draft bylaw number 1028-1 entitled bylaw modifying bylaw number 1028 decreeing and imposing duties on transfers of immovables. Each member of the council having received a copy, the deputy town clerk deposits draft bylaw number 1028-1 entitled bylaw modifying bylaw number 1028 decreeing and imposing duties on transfers of immovables. The council takes notice of the deposit of the said draft bylaw by the deputy town clerk. 8.1.
Sorry, Jeremy, are these the numbers that I sent you? Are these are the numbers? Because we did an analysis with the transfer duties.
Yes.
We did an analysis. I asked Armin to do an analysis of particular rates in particular groups. I sent you the numbers. Are these those numbers?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the 280.
So those are the
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
I didn't know it was up for a resolution.
Surprise.
Okay.
No. We discussed it.
It's in your package.
It was part of the agenda.
Right, no, but, okay, never mind. I'm fine with it, it's just
Go
that
ahead.
we hadn't actually discussed it as a group.
It was part of the agenda.
We spoke about it a
What
while
are the
ago.
final numbers? There was a concept, but the final
We're harmonizing with the City of Montreal.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay.
We discussed it a long time ago.
Yes,
Yeah.
we did.
We all.
Go ahead, Joe.
We're at 7.
All right, never mind.
It was on the 14th before we were able to,
Oh, all right, okay.
That's right.
I remember going through the numbers.
8.1, approval of the disbursements for the month of April 2022. Considering that council reviewed the list of payments for the month of April 2022, it is proposed by Councillor
Goldwax.
seconded by Councillor
Battery.
Edery, and resolved that the disbursements for the period from March 16, 2022 to April 15, 2022 in the total amount of $1,295,843.26 are hereby approved. Anyone opposed?
Nope.
Adopted. 8.2, tabling of the financial report and the external auditor's report for the 2021 fiscal year. In accordance with section 105.2 of the Cities and Towns Act, the town treasurer hereby deposited the financial report and the external auditor's report for the 2021 fiscal year. Councillor Edery, would you like to make any comments?
It was a good year.
I like that, it's nice and short.
We basically went over the numbers with our auditors. We had somewhere short of $1 million surplus. That surplus, the thing is, the last 2 years have been kind of awkward, weird years from a financial point of view, given COVID. There are a lot of things that haven't happened that were budgeted for, a lot of CSR activities. So I don't take that as an indication of what's going to happen in the future, because we're going to be readjusting back to normalcy eventually. But I'm glad to say we have a surplus somewhere short of $1 million, which is great. And we're in solid shape. Our debt levels are lower than they've ever been. Our financing costs are lower than they've ever been. We're saving somewhere in the vicinity of $600,000 a year in financing costs. We brought our debt down from somewhere around $12 million to somewhere in the vicinity of $4 million. Our only problem from a financing point of view is we don't have enough debt that's coming up in the next year to accelerate pay downs. So we're in very solid shape from that point of view. So yeah, overall, glad. We generally, at the end of the summer, do a presentation of the financials to the town and public so they can ask questions and go over everything. So we'll be doing that by the end of the summer. So it'll be more detailed.
Okay, thank you. 8.3, tabling of the Commission Municipale du Québec November 2020 reports and the adoption of the budget and the 3-year capital expenditures program. The town treasurer hereby deposited the CMQ November 2020 reports regarding their audit and the adoption of the budget and PTI. 8.4, payment to the second installment of Hampstead share of Montreal agglomeration 2022 annual expenses. It is proposed by Councillor Schaefer, seconded by Councillor Edery. And resolved that the town of Hampstead pays the second installment dated 2022-0601 in the amount of $6,256,794 for its share of expenses in the 2022 operations for the agglomeration of Montreal. The Treasurer's Certificate number 22-01 dated February 2nd, 2022 has been issued by the town's treasurer attesting to the availability of funds to cover the described expenses. Anyone opposed?
I am, and I'm voting for it anyway. So we do it under protest because the City of Montreal is essentially screwing.
So you're opposing?
No, I'm voting for it because I have no choice. Otherwise, the government's going to put us in the tutorship.
Okay.
But
8.5, payment of the second installment of Hampstead share to the Communauté Métropolitaine de Montréal for 2022. It is proposed by Councillor Elfassi, seconded by Councillor Schaefer. Resolved the town of Hampstead pays the second installment dated July 15, 2022 in the amount of $112,817 for their share of expenses for the 2022 operations of the Communauté Métropolitaine de Montréal. The Treasurer's Certificate number 22-02 dated February 2nd, 2022 has been issued by the town's treasurer attesting to the availability of funds to cover the described expenses. Anyone opposed? No. Adopted. 9.1. Granting of contract with the supply and plantation of trees. Considering that there's been a call for tenders by way of written invitation of the supply and plantation of trees, considering that after analyzing the tenders open on April 12, 2022, the lowest bidder conforming to the requirements of the tender invitation is 160676 Canada Inc. It is proposed by Councillor Elfassi, seconded by Councillor Goldwax. Resolved the following quotation for the following contract be and is hereby approved, the whole as more amply delineated hereunder. Supply and plantation of trees as per specifications and tender documents. Grand total taxes included $61,893.34. Anyone opposed? Approved. 9.2. Renewal of contract for the disposition of street broom waste and materials from excavations. Considering that there has been a public call for tenders for a 2-year contract for the disposition of street broom waste and materials from excavations, with in addition two renewal options of 1 year each. Considering that after analyzing tenders open on May 29, 2020, the lowest bidder conforming to the requirements of the tender invitation was Recyclage Notre Dame Inc. Considering that resolution number 2020-151 adopted by the council in June 2020 authorized granting the 2-year contract to the lowest bidder conforming to the requirements for the period from August 15, 2020 to August 14, 2022, it is proposed by Councillor Elfassi, seconded by Councillor Schaefer. Resolved that the contract with Recyclage Notre Dame Inc. for the disposition of street broom waste and materials from excavation be renewed for the first optional renewal for the period from August 15, 2022 to August 14, 2023. The rates outlined below. GST and QST special taxes on aggregates are applicable in the above mentioned prices. That according to the previous year's quantities, the estimated amount of expenditure for the 1-year contract is $65,000 plus applicable taxes. Anyone opposed? Adopted. 10.1. Hiring of Mr. Hervé Barrault Lindor as caretaker driver. Whereas one permanent caretaker driver position, salary grade 6 with the Community Services and Recreation Department is presently vacant. It is proposed by Councillor Goldwax, seconded by Councillor Bunning. Resolved to hire Mr. Hervé Barrault Lindor as a permanent caretaker driver, subject to the usual conditions in accordance with the provisions of the collective agreement between CUPE Local 301 and the Town of Hampstead. Anyone opposed? Adopted. 10.2. Approving of hiring approval of hiring of Ms. Brianna Wilson as temporary office agent. Considering that the town of Hampstead requires the hiring of a temporary office agent with the Recreation Community Services Department, salary grade 6 for a period not to exceed 6 months, consider that the Director General and the Human Resources Director are recommending the temporary hiring of Ms. Brianna Wilson to fill such position. It is proposed by Councillor Schaefer, seconded by Councillor Bunning, and resolved to approve the temporary hiring of Ms. Brianna Wilson as temporary office agent, subject to the usual conditions in accordance with the provisions of the collective agreement between CUPE Local 429 and the town of Hampstead. Anyone opposed? Adopted. 10.3. Approval of the hiring list of white-collar student employees for the Community Services and Recreation Department. Considering that council members reviewed the list of the Community Services and Interim Recreation Director submitted on April 13, 2022 on the hiring of white-collar students employees. It is proposed by Councillor Bunning, seconded by Councillor Schaefer. Resolved that the town council approves the hiring of white-collar student employees as detailed in the list from the Community Services and Recreation Department. The hiring is subject to the usual conditions in accordance with the provisions of the collective agreement between CUPE Local 429 and the town of Hampstead. Anyone opposed? Adopted. 10.4. Approval of hiring contract with Mr. Tony Pitarelli as foreman horticulture. Whereas the town of Hampstead requires the temporary hiring of a foreman. Whereas the Director General and the Human Resources Director recommend the hiring of Mr. Tony Pitarelli to fill such position. It is proposed by Councillor Bunning, seconded by Councillor Schaefer, resolved to approve the contractual hiring of Mr. Tony Pitarelli as foreman horticulture from April 19th to December 2nd, 2022, in accordance with the conditions prescribed in the contract signed on April 14th, 2022, between Mr. Pitarelli and the town as represented by the Director General and contained in the confidential personnel file in the Human Resources Director's office. Anyone opposed? Adopted. 10.5. Approval of hiring contract for Mr. Farouk Nimeh as foreman. Whereas the town of Hampstead requires the temporary hiring of a foreman, whereas the Director General and the Human Resources Director recommend the hiring of Mr. Farouk Nimeh to fill such position. It is proposed by Councillor Bunning, seconded by Councillor Schaefer. Resolved to approve the contractual hiring of Mr. Farouk Nimeh as foreman from May 2nd to December 2nd, 2022, in accordance with the conditions described in the contract signed on April 26, 2022, between Mr. Nimeh and the town as represented by the Director General, contained in the confidential personnel file in the Human Resources Director's office. Anyone opposed?
No.
Adopted. 10.6. Hiring of Mrs. Sarah Eve Lantin as Communications Officer. It is proposed by Councillor Bunning, seconded by Councillor Schaefer. Resolved to hire Mrs. Sarah Eve Lantin as Communications Officer, subject to the usual conditions in accordance with the conditions described in the contract signed on April 19, 2022, between Mrs. Lantin and the town, as represented by the Director General and containing the confidential personnel file in the Human Resource Director's office. Anyone opposed?
Nope.
Adopted. So now we have
Second question period.
other business. Any other business?
Is she going to announce her hiring? Is she going to announce her hiring? Is she going to announce her hiring?
The communication officer.
Just a quick note of thanks. It's 11 o'clock at night, and it's still a work night. So thank you to Richard, Brenda, Teddy, Mario, and Grant.
Yes.
All our team down.
Thank you.
And thank you to all the residents who stayed.
Stuck it out.
Yeah.
Next time you deserve a cake.
All right. Second question period. Any questions?
Have coffee.
Sure.
I'll leave it for next time.
Okay. All right. So we'll move to adjournment.
Gold wax.
Okay.
I propose.
Okay. Councilor Goldwax, seconded by Councilor Bunning. This meeting is adjourned at 10:53 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.